March 5 general elections almost complete except for 2 constituencies. RSP's 125 seats win paves way for new majority government. Newly elected members sworn in to Nepal's National Assembly, oath administered by National Assembly Chair in Singhdarbar. Nepal's stock market surges today after election results. Nifty hits 3 consecutive positive circuits, suspending trading. Iran-US-Israel conflict escalates further on 10th day. Iran continues to come under bombardment. Global oil prices hit highest since 2022. Energy and commodity markets react to tensions in key Gulf regions. And NFA operations halted as players lock office. Football governing body pledges gradual payments. Good evening, I'm Sarah Sapsanamarai. Welcome to NTV World Prime Time News. We're coming to you live from Kathmandu at 1900 hours Nepal time. Elsewhere, it's 13:15 in London, 20:15 in Tokyo, and just after midnight in Sydney. Now the news in detail. Election results have been declared across Nepal, except for 2 constituencies, which is Sankhua Sabha and Dhanusha 1. In Sankhua Sabha, CPN-UML candidate Arjun Kumar Karki is leading with 13,051 votes, while the Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP candidate Mingma Sherpa has secured 11,789 votes. In the latest results, Rashtriya Swatantra Party candidate Sudhan Gurung has been elected to the House of Representatives member from Gorkha 1. According to Election Office, Gorkha's Information Officer Rabilal Subedi, RSP candidate Gurung secured 29,896 votes, defeating his nearest competitor Prem Kumar Khatri of Nepali Congress by 14,498 votes. Khatri secured 15,398 votes. Hariraj Adhikari of Nepali Communist Party gained 11,124 votes, and CPN-UML candidate garnered 3,732. With this, Rashtriya Swatantra Party has won 125 seats, while CPN-UML has been reduced to 8. Nepali Congress, which came in second nationally, has won 18 constituencies. With Karki leading in Sankhua Sabha, CPN-UML could potentially secure 9 seats. Meanwhile, Nepali Communist Party has won 7. In Dhanusha 1, the candidacy of Rashtriya Swatantra Party's Kishori Shah Kamal was annulled, leaving CPN candidate Matrika Prasad Yadav in the lead. However, Kishori Shah has filed a writ at the Supreme Court regarding the annulment. Supreme Court issued a notice on Monday, and the final decision is expected on 13th of March. Meanwhile, the Shram Sanskriti Party, led by Harka Sampang, has become 5th party in the row. The party has won seats in Bhojpur, Khotang and Sunsari 1, while narrowly losing in Ilam and Pachthar. Rashtriya Prajatantra Party has won 1 seat in Jumla. On the other side, in the count of proportional representation election system of the lower house is underway. Rashtriya Swatantra Party has established a commanding lead, amassing over 4.5 million votes and securing 125 wins. Nepali Congress holds the second position with 1.5 million votes and 18 wins, followed by CPN-UML, which has garnered 1.26 million votes with 8 wins and 1 active lead. Nepali Communist Party sits in 4th with approximately 677,000, while Shram Sanskriti Party rounds out the top 5 at 321,737 votes. The counting of votes is underway. In the latest deadline, it will be by Nepali New Year 2083, but could be as early as the President receives the final report from the Election Commission on the lower house election. The Commission's preparations are to submit the result by the end of this week, meaning Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP is all set to form the new majority by mid-March. Everyone at the moment is waiting to know how and when will the process to form a new government begin. Smithu Singh Tamang looks into how and when the new government will be formed, along with the maiden session of the freshly mandated House of Representatives.
Nepal's newly elected parliament is expected to convene latest by the 30th day of the final results of the March 5 House of Representatives election. The final result announcement day will be counted from the time the Election Commission submits its report to the President. According to the Federal Parliament Secretariat of Nepal, as per constitutional provision, the President must summon the first meeting of the new House of Representatives within 30 days after he receives the report.
पहिला त निर्वाचनको अन्तिम मत परिणाम सार्वजनिक भएको मितिले 30 दिनभित्र सभाको बैठक बस्नुपर्छ भन्ने संवैधानिक व्यवस्था छ। अन्तिम मत सार्वजनिक भएपछाडिको 30 दिनभित्र बस्ने गरेर नै सबै कुराको व्यवस्थापन हुन्छ।
Nepal follows a parliamentary system where the government is formed based on majority support in the lower house of bicameral parliament. The process begins once the President of Nepal formally summons the first session of the House of Representatives of Nepal. During that first meeting, newly elected lawmakers are sworn into office. The House then begins its internal processes, including the election of a Speaker and Deputy Speaker within 15 days, who will preside over parliamentary proceedings. At the same time, as per Article 76(1) of the Constitution, President appoints the parliamentary party leader of the party with majority to the post of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers under his or her chairpersonship. With the likely equation of the House of Representatives tilting towards single-party majority, there would be no need for any coalition this time around. As per constitutional provision, the newly appointed Prime Minister must then seek a vote of confidence in the lower house within 30 days, formally establishing the new government. The upcoming parliamentary session will therefore mark the beginning of both the new legislative term and the process of forming Nepal's next government. As the process demands around 30 days for the appointment of new Prime Minister in Nepal, all eyes are when will the President receive the report and summon the first meeting. The 30-day deadline is the maximum. Nepali people most likely are set to see the new Prime Minister before the Nepali New Year 2083. Smitu Kising Tamang reporting for NTV World.
17 of the 18 newly elected members of Nepal's upper house, the National Assembly, were sworn in today at a ceremony held in Singhdarbar. National Assembly Chair Narayan Prasad Dahal administered the oath of office to the new members of the Assembly. The National Assembly has a total of 59 members, each serving a 6-year term, with 1/3 of members' terms ending every 2 years as per constitutional provision. The newly sworn-in members include Kama Bahadur Khati, Geeta Devkota, Chandra Bahadur Kesi, Jagat Timal Sinha, Dharmendra Paswan, Prem Prasad Dangal, Mahanta Thakur, Ranjit Karna, Ram Kumari Chakri, Rekha Kumari Jha, Roshni Meche, Lalit Jang Shahi, Leela Kumari Bhandari, Basudev Khimire, Samjana Devkota, Sunil Bahadur Thapa and Somanath Portel. Member Meena Singh Rakhal was absent from the ceremony. Nepal's March 5 House of Representatives election has brought a wave of youth to the parliament, with 20 candidates under 35 winning, mainly from Rashtriya Swatantra Party. Key young victors include Sobita Gautam, Sulabh Kharel, Rubina Acharya and Badan Kumar Bhandari, many of whom are law or journalism graduates, entrepreneurs or social activists. The election marks a major setback for traditional and regional parties, including long-dominant Madhesi and Tharu groups. This reflects growing demand for fresh faces and new leadership in Nepali politics. Other young lawmakers elected include Sushant Baidik, Ranjan Upani, Som Sharma, Jhabilal Dumre and KP Khanal, alongside representatives from Nepali Congress, Rashtriya Prajatantra Party and Shram Sanskriti Party. The Election Commission of Nepal has officially announced the termination of the Election Code of Conduct 2082. Implemented on January 19, 2026, the code was designed to ensure integrity, fairness and transparency during the National Assembly elections on January 24 and the House of Representatives elections on March 5. The code also aimed to create a fearless environment for candidates and voters in line with Section 22 of the Election Commission Act 2073. As per the Commission's latest decision, all provisions of the Election Code of Conduct will cease to be effective from midnight. Narayan Prasad Bhattarai, in fact, Joint Secretary and spokesperson of the Election Commission, confirmed the termination and also thanked all stakeholders for their cooperation during the election period. We'll take a short break here. More news coming up. Stay with us. You're watching NTV World. Welcome back to Primetime News. Security personnel deployed to Syangja district in Gandaki province for the Nepal's March 5 HOR election have returned to their home districts following the conclusion of the voting process. Around 1,500 officers were mobilized from other districts to ensure a free, fair and peaceful election, as a local security force alone was insufficient. Chief of Syangja District Police, Datiram Nyopani, said while vote counting for the proportional representation category is still ongoing, remaining security personnel in the district are adequate to manage the process. Meanwhile, in Kathmandu Valley, a total of 6,543 security personnel were mobilized across Kathmandu, Bhaktapur and Lalitpur, including members of Nepali Army, Nepal Police and Armed Police Force. Inspector General of Nepal Police, Dan Bahadur Karki, announced that a farewell ceremony for the policemen will be held on Thursday. Nepal's stock market surged following the Rashtriya Swatantra Party's decisive win in the House of Representatives election on March 5. This prompted Nepal Stock Exchange, NEPSE, to halt trading multiple times due to positive circuit limits. NEPSE index climbed 162.93 points, reaching 2,875.43, marking a 6% gain. Early enthusiasm among investors triggered 3 consecutive positive circuits, a 4% rise in the first 20 minutes, a 5% rise after 40 minutes, and 6% increase later in the session, leading to the suspension of trading for the day. Under the current circuit break rules, the NEPSE halts trading for 20 minutes if the index rises or falls by 4% in the first hour, 40 minutes for a 5% change in the second hour, and suspends trading for the remainder of the day if the index moves 6% or more. Today, 261 companies traded 1.14 million shares in 4,051 transactions, totaling 555.9 million rupees, which is $4.2 million approximately. The Rasuagari border point, a key trade route between Nepal and China, has recorded imports worth approximately $142.6 million and exports around $2.25 million, according to Rasua Customs Office. Chief Customs Officer Tulsi Prasad Bhattarai reported that by mid-February in the current fiscal year, imports through the border point reached 18.76 billion rupees, which is approximately $142.6 million, while exports totaled around $2.25 million. Trade had been disrupted after a flood from the Chinese side in July damaged the Rasuagari customs infrastructure and access road, preventing normal operations for several months. Now, have you heard of Holi, the festival of colors that lasts for more than a month? Come to Ranatharu settlements in Nepal's far western region. The festivities typically last for 1 month and 8 days. This day, in fact, the celebrations were briefly paused for the March 5 elections, but have now resumed, with singing and dancing taking place across villages. Vijeta Bhandari, along with our local correspondent Dinesh Bista, brings the report.
The Rana Tharu community in Nepal's far western plains celebrates Hori, similar to the Festival of Colors Holi, with distinctive traditions that unfold over several weeks. The early phase of the festival is known as Jinda Hori. From the full moon day of Nepali month of Magh to the full moon of Phagun, community members gather at night to dance in groups to the rhythm of drums and madal. Young people and elders alike take part, turning the celebrations into a lively communal gathering. After the ritual of Holika Dahan, when a bonfire is lit to mark the burning of the demoness Holika, the second phase called Mari Hori begins. Mari Hori, meaning dead Hori, continues for another 8 days. During this time, people wear traditional attire and travel around villages during the day performing Hori dances. The final day of Mari Hori is known as Khaktehara, which holds special significance. On Khaktehara Day, villagers gather early in the morning to break a ceremonial mud pot filled with symbolic items such as eye coal, vermilion, and mud marbles woven into wooden picks. The pot is then taken to the outskirts of the village and shattered according to ritual, symbolizing the end of evils and diseases within the community.
दाह संस्कार गर्ने ल हाम्रो नगर चाहिँ राम्रो होस् र यो जुन पीडा जुन अब यताउता जुन बिमारी छ नि यसलाई सबै लिएर देवी माता लिएर जानु होला भनेर हामी चाहिँ विदाई गरेर
Afterward, families invite relatives, friends, and companions to share traditional sweets and dishes. However, according to tradition, Hori is considered fully concluded only after the Charai festival is observed later around mid-March. For the Rana Tharu community, Hori is celebrated as a symbol of the victory of truth over falsehood. The festival is also believed to strengthen unity, brotherhood, and cultural identity within the community. Recognizing its cultural importance, local governments have also been supporting traditional costumes and cultural programs during the celebrations. For the Rana Tharu community, Hori is not only a joyful festival, but also a symbol of tradition, culture, and social harmony, as this centuries-old practice continues to enrich the cultural identity of Nepal's far western region.
International updates coming up next. For now, a short break. The US and Israel continue to bombard Iran, with explosions reported in Qom and Tehran, hours after Israeli attacks on oil facilities caused toxic smoke across the Iranian capital. Explosions and towering plumes of smoke were reported in southern Beirut as well, following a series of Israeli airstrikes targeting sites in the city. The strikes are part of the ongoing escalation in the region, which has already seen clashes between Israel and Iranian-backed groups. Iran too has carried out a series of retaliatory missile and drone strikes against targets in the Gulf and beyond in response to continued US and Israeli military action in its territory. Meanwhile, oil prices have jumped more than 25% to their highest levels since mid-2022 as the ongoing Middle East war enters its 10th day. Benchmark crude oil prices exceeded $100 a barrel. Energy markets also reacted sharply, with futures contracts jumping more than 20% in early trading, while gold and other commodities saw increased volatility as investors sought safe haven assets. The surge reflects supply concerns arising from escalating clashes in key oil-producing regions, with traders anticipating potential disruptions to exports from the Gulf. G7 nations, meanwhile, are holding an emergency meeting later today to discuss surging oil prices amid escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. US President Donald Trump, however, dismissed the spike as a small price to pay to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat, reiterating his insistence that the rise is temporary. Meanwhile, Iran blamed European countries, including France, for creating the conditions that led to United States and Israeli attacks, which triggered a war with the Islamic Republic. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai also alleged the attacks aimed at partitioning their country to take illegal possession or their oil riches.
کشورهای اروپایی در برهه‌های متاسفانه به شکل‌گیری این روند کمک کردند. زمانی که به جای اصرار بر حاکمیت قانون، به جای ایستادگی در برابر قلدرمآبی و زیاده‌خواهی آمریکا، با اونها هم کلام و هم نوا شدند در شورای امنیت سازمان ملل در رابطه با بحث بازگرداندن تحریم‌ها و همه این موارد در کنار همدیگه باعث شد که طرف‌های آمریکایی و رژیم صهیونیستی جری بشن در ارتکاب جنایاتشون و قانون شکنی.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the UK is working with the US on the war in the Middle East, caveating that decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. It follows a call between Starmer and US President Donald Trump, during which the two discussed the conflict in the Middle East after Trump insulted the British Prime Minister over his initial refusal to have any role in the war.
The US and the UK are working together every single day, as they always have. Obviously, in relation to Iran, the US are now using UK air bases under the agreement that we've reached. Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make. It is really important. That's a fundamental principle.
Earlier on Sunday, Iran's military and political leaders have pledged allegiance to Mojtaba Khamenei, who's been named to replace his killed father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the country's new supreme leader. It was 9 days after US-Israeli strikes killed the elder Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and plunged the Middle East into war. The clerical government's assembly of experts convened to choose their next leader, defying threats from the US and Israel to oppose him. Mojtaba Khamenei is appointed and introduced as the third leader of the Sacred System of Islamic Republic of Iran, based on the decisive vote of the respected representatives of the Assembly of Experts. The younger Khamenei is considered a fellow hardliner who will pursue his father's rejection of dissent. US President Donald Trump has previously dismissed the younger Khamenei as a lightweight and insisted again that he should have a say in the new leader's appointment. Meanwhile, China says it opposes any targeting of Iran's new supreme leader after threats by the Israeli military against a successor to his slain father, Ali Khamenei.
中方反对以任何借口干涉他国内政，伊朗的主权安全和领土完整应当得到尊重。中方呼吁立即停止军事行动，尽快重回对话谈判，避免紧张局势进一步升级。
We're going for another short breather here. More international news and sports news lined up next. The fourth session of the 14th National People's Congress convened a plenary meeting on Monday to hear work reports from the NPC Standing Committee, the Supreme People's Court and the Supreme People's Procuratorate. The session was attended by Xi Jinping, who also serves as General Secretary of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee and Chairperson of the Central Military Commission, along with other senior Chinese officials at the Great Hall of the People. Deputies will also review a report on the overhaul of existing laws and proposals for handling specific laws and legal decisions. In the afternoon, group sessions were scheduled to deliberate on both the Standing Committee's work report and the legal overhaul proposals. The session underscores Beijing's focus on legislative and judicial reforms as part of broader governance priorities, signaling the government's intent to maintain legal and institutional oversight while continuing economic and social policy implementation. A massive landslide at Bantargebang Integrated Waste Treatment Facility, one of the world's largest open landfills, killed at least 4 people and left several others missing as rescue teams continue digging through unstable heaps of garbage. The victims included 2 garbage truck drivers and 2 food stall operators who were working or resting near the landfill when the collapse occurred. 4 additional people escaped the disaster. More than 300 search and rescue personnel have been deployed using heavy machinery and sniffer dogs to locate survivors amid the precarious mounds of waste. The landfill, which sprawls over more than 110 hectares and contains roughly 55 million tons of trash, serves Jakarta and its satellite cities, collectively home to about 42 million residents who generate an estimated 14,000 tons of waste daily. Widespread wildfires have swept across Lampang province, destroying about 119 acres of forest land and pushing air pollution to unhealthy levels across northern Thailand. The fires have severely affected protected forest areas, including Thampha Thai National Park, where emergency crews spent more than 7 hours battling a major blaze that destroyed around 130 rail before it was brought under control late Sunday. The environmental impact has extended to neighboring Chiang Mai, where thick smoke has reduced visibility and pushed particulate matter levels 2.5 into orange and red health risk zones. Authorities said the causes of several fires remain under investigation, while firefighting teams continue to monitor the region as high temperatures and prolonged dry conditions raise the risk of further outbreaks. The 7th edition of the India-Japan Joint Military Exercise Dharma Guardian 2026 has concluded in Chaubatia in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand. The 2-week exercise brought together troops from the Indian Army and the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force for joint operational drills and training. Held from the 24th of February to 8th of March, the exercise focused on counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism operations, along with urban warfare and combat training in complex terrain. The drills were designed to strengthen coordination and operational skills through a range of field training activities. The 48 operations involved intelligence patrols, cordon and search missions, heli-borne operations and hostage rescue drills. Time now for sports update. The All Nepal Football Association has expressed serious concern after its member organization, Nepal Football Players Union, padlocked its central office in Sadubato yesterday. In a press release, ANFA said the action, taken without prior notice, could harm cooperation between sports bodies. The association emphasized ongoing dialogue with clubs and players over the organization of the 8th Division League, scheduled a month after the National League concludes. ANFA also highlighted pending payments, prize money and welfare funds for players, pledging to release them gradually according to rules. Warning that the padlock could disrupt football activities, ANFA urged the Players' Union to lift it immediately and resolve issues through dialogue. The head coach of Iraq's men's football team, Graham Arnold, has issued an urgent plea to FIFA to delay his team's intercontinental qualifier for the World Cup because of disruptions caused by the escalating Israeli-United States war on Iran. Iraq faces major logistical issues before a winner-takes-all playoff against either Suriname or Bolivia, scheduled for March 31 in Monterrey, Mexico. With Iraqi airspace closed until April 1st due to the war, Arnold's squad, which is made up predominantly of players from the domestic league, will be unable to fully gather. Players have not secured visas for the playoff in Mexico due to foreign embassy closures, and Arnold is stranded in the United Arab Emirates due to the conflict. On the other side, Iran was the first team to seal qualification for the World Cup, but the war has thrown their participation in doubt, both due to logistical difficulties and due to attacks on Iran by the host nation US. We're almost at the end of our news bulletin, but before we wrap up, let's take a look at the headlines one more time. March 5 general elections almost complete except for 2 constituencies. RSP's 125 seats win paves way for new majority government. Newly elected members sworn into Nepal's National Assembly, oath administered by the chair in Singadarwar. Nepal's stock market surges today after election results. NEPSE hints 3 consecutive positive circuits, suspending trading. Iran-US-Israel conflict escalates further on the 10th day. Iran continues to come under bombardment. Global oil prices hit highest since 2022. Energy and commodity markets react to tensions in key Gulf regions. And ENFA operations halted as players lock office. Football governing body pledges gradual payments. As Nepal stands at this historic crossroads, we must recognize that this seismic shift in our democracy was built on the wary soldiers of the Election Commission, the security forces, and the Madi Pahari, who served as quiet guardians of our peace in the furthest reaches of our hills. Yet as the old guards fall and a new power rises with a strong mandate, we must not forget that a landslide could be a double-edged sword, a sacred trust that risks becoming a tyranny of the majority, if not wielded with wisdom and humility. To our incoming leaders and the subsequent government, we urge you to not forget that the halls you will now walk carry the grief of the families who traded their loved ones for this democracy. You inherit more than an office. You inherit a living promise to uphold the Constitution as a shield for everyone and to ensure that the law is equal for all. I'm Sarah Sapsanamarai. We'll see you in our next bulletin at 20 to 100 hours Nepal time. Do join us through our social media and also get the latest update from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. Have a wonderful evening ahead.
Welcome to the studios of NTV World in Kathmandu, Public Service Broadcasting PSB Nepal's new initiative to make Nepal more visible and audible to the global audience. Welcome on board.
This is NTV World, facts that speak, insights that matter.
Telling the stories of a changing planet. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world. exploring the heartbeat of Nepali creativity. This is NTV World.
The power of story shaped by technology. NTV World.
Unearthing Nepal's hidden heritage. Discovering the timeless Nepal.
Telling stories that endure across centuries. Where culture breathes, stories bloom.
When the world moves, we make a sense of it. NTV World.
Taste of Nepal. Every recipe, every flavor tells the story.
Journalism in the digital age. Fast, focused, verified.
Stories hold power. Stories reflecting life. Stories of the hinterlands.
Reporting for NTV World.
This is NTV World. Welcome to News Hour.
This is NTV World. Welcome to Primetime News.
One story at a time.
Crossing borders, connecting voices, where Nepal meets the world in dialogue. This is NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Voices that connect Nepal to the world, bringing perspective, region and relevance to every story. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Stand by. Mic is on.
3, 2, 1, cue.
We are NTV World.
Nepal is a country well known for the world's highest peak, Mount Everest, and the birthplace of Lord Buddha, the pioneer of peace. This is a country equally graced by the beauty of natural scenery and cultural riches. Unity in diversity, immense tolerance, and confluence of coexistence, Nepal is a country of its own uniqueness. Lord Buddha, the pioneer of non-violence, tolerance and peace, was born on the full moon day in Lumbini in 623 BC. Peace, compassion, mercy, tolerance and salvation are the perennial paths of Buddhism that lead or have been leading mankind to complete freedom and welfare of all humankind. Lord Buddha taught the world to engage more on spiritual contemplation following those paths. Buddhism has indeed become a new way to most sought peace and prosperity. Thus, Lumbini has been growing into a sacred destination not only for Buddhists but also for peace lovers and spiritual practitioners. The life story and its supporting remnants related to the childhood life of Prince Siddhartha Gautam can still be seen and heard in Kapilvastu. The sacred historical bits and pieces attached to King Suddhodana, the father of Lord Buddha, which are of archaeological significance, will speak of Kapilvastu as an open museum. The remnant of eastern gate of the compound of King Suddhodana's palace was the main gate to the premises. You can witness here the entrance gates in all four directions, and indeed countless remains lying on your left and right, and back and front, bearing historical significance. In ancient time, the area was even known as Kapilvastu as today it is, but later the place was also called Tilalakot. According to Buddhist books and literature, Devdaha in Rupandehi district was homeland of Lord Buddha's maternal uncle and father-in-law as well. The bricks used to build homes are still lying plenty scattered there, and to your wonder, some bricks even weigh 12 kilograms. There is another place called Kudan, which is within the district headquarters of Taulihawa. And legend has that here, King Suddhodana encountered his son Siddhartha for the first time after the latter was enlightened to Buddha. This place was also called Nigrodhara, which is now surrounded by the remnants of stupas. Similarly, this was the very place where Buddha's stepmother, Gautami Prajapati, handed monk's dress over to Lord Buddha. Likewise, Ram Gram in Nawalparasi district is the place where a stupa of Lord Buddha's cool bone was built after his parinirvana demise. Excavation is still undergoing in this place. Kapilvastu, Lumbini, Ram Gram and Devdaha are therefore indelible places highly attached to the life of Lord Buddha. Kapilvastu was the kingdom of Sakya, Lord Buddha's clan, whereas Ramgram and Devdaha were of Koliyas. And the two states were bordered by Rohini River, some 27 kilometers east. To Kapilvastu was Lumbini, which was at that time densely cocooned by sal and ashok trees and was popularly known as Sacred Garden. Buddhist tales say once when Buddha's mother Maya Devi was journeying to her parental home, Maya Devi she experienced delivery symptoms. Gripping a branch of a tree, she gave birth to Prince Siddhartha. According to some old Buddhist literature, the birth of Prince Siddhartha bore several symptoms and well indicated that the newborn baby was not a common birth, but a birth of a dignified, spiritual, and an incarnate. Legend has that the newborn baby walked 7 steps far immediately after it was off mother's womb. Moreover, the new baby uttered the following revelations: I would be the first among the mortals to go beyond passing through this worldly web. This is my last birth. Rebirth never happens with me again. Prince Siddhartha lived an affluent life of 29 years at Kapilvastu Palace. But when he tried to penetrate and see close to the eternal truth of life, then he started contemplating on life. Why does a man become old? Why does he suffer from different diseases? Why does he die? These were the pertinent questions that haunted him most. Driven by divine spirit to find ultimate truth, he decided to renounce royal life. One night, he left his family, friends, and palace to seek salvation and eternal truth. Roaming several days, he reached Bodh Gaya of India, and there under a peepal tree, he had gone for meditation and became Buddha. He gave his first religious preaching in Sarnath in Varanasi, India. He talked about eternal truth, human duty, peace, and the path of salvation there, and earned a number of followers. Buddha underwent parinirvana, death, at the age of 80 in Kushinagar. Addressing his followers just before his parinirvana, Lord Buddha said, "My devotees will visit and throng around the places where I took birth, where I was enlightened, where I first delivered my preaching, and where I got parinirvana." Buddham sharanam gacchami, dharmam sharanam gacchami, sangham sharanam gacchami. So, Lumbini, saturated by Lord Buddha's peace-loaded messages for over ages, has been the most sacred religious sites for many, if not only for Buddhists. Today, the Buddhists and the followers of Buddhism and peace lovers of the world over visit Lumbini to pay homage to Lord Buddha and feel and get familiar to his brainchild, peace. King Ashoka, a staunch supporter of Buddha, visited Lumbini in 249 BC and built a pillar quite near to Buddha's nativity site. The Ashoka pillar bears an inscription that says, "Buddha was born here." Lumbini is not only an attractive tourism hub today, but it's also a live state of historical and archaeological significance. To preserve Lumbini, the government of Nepal and Japan Buddhist Association have jointly launched the excavation since 1992. Lumbini had undergone negligence of both government and non-government entities for centuries. Planned and coordinated effort began only in 1953. The United Nations appointed famous Japanese professor and engineer Kenjo Tange to make a master plan for the development of Lumbini. Government of Nepal accepted the proposed master plan in 1978. To develop Lumbini according to the master plan, Government of Nepal established Lumbini Development Fund in 1985. According to the master plan, Lumbini Development Region has been divided into 3 zones. At the meantime, several phases of development have also been adopted. In first zone comes Sacred Garden. Second, Zone of Stupas. And in third comes New Lumbini Village. It is expected that the Sacred Garden will create a kind of aura, ensuring peaceful ambience, natural serenity, and religious sacredness to its visitors, in which they can feel deep Lord Buddha's message of peace and compassion. The very core of Lumbini Garden is the nativity site of Buddha. The plain bas relief of Maya Devi, which is supposed to be about 17 to 1800 years old and depicts the nativity scene, has been put in the newly renovated temple. Near the temple lies Sakya Kund, sacred pond, where Maya Devi was supposed to have taken bath before giving birth to Buddha. Zone of Stupas is another important feature of Lumbini Master Plan, within which territory countries, international associations, and devotees of world over can build stupas of their own in dedication to Lord Buddha. Moreover, the zone of stupas has been divided into 2. In the western part, the followers of Mahayana sect are building their stupas, whereas eastern part is dominated by Theravada sect. This zone of stupas has 41 geographic subdivisions in which various countries, organizations, and devotees have been building chortens, monasteries and stupas respectively. With a view to carry study and research on Buddhism and its inherent philosophy, a cultural studies center has been set up in Lumbini. The study center has museum, library and archives in which you can find Buddhism-related books, literature, arts and other valuable materials. Similarly, Lumbini International Research Center has been set up, which provides materials and other needed support to researchers of other religion, philosophy and culture. There is also a library for those who want to study about peace and religion. Another major attraction of Lumbini is its eternal flame, which is placed in Shanti Kunj Peace Arbor. The flame was ignited on the occasion of the International Peace Year in 1985. The flame can be considered as bold symbol to keep Lord Buddha's peace messages alive. Lumbini village is the exterior part of Lumbini Master Plan, where various facilities of lodging and fooding for the visitors are catered in depending on their capacities. There are a number of cheap and affordable rest houses to moderate ones and luxury hotels laced by all modern amenities. A peace stupa has been built in the northern side of Lumbini. It is the tallest stupa in the area. The story of the greatness of Lord Buddha's birthplace, Lumbini, is not an imagined story of a next world. Lumbini, in fact, is the most sacred place which can emanate peace, friendship, kindness, compassion, and feeling of coexistence to all people of all ages. This is a destination to inward peace, a holy place for enlightenment. Indeed, the sacredness of Lumbini existed in the past too. It is today too, and it will be tomorrow too.
Some moments define a nation, some moments test it. Tonight in Geopod, we discuss those very moments. I'm Shivani Thapa Bosnet. For democracies, transitions are milestones. For states, they are moments of risk. Authority fragments, uncertainty expands, and hesitation carries a cost. Nepal is in one such moment, in a world less tolerant of ambiguity, especially for small states. Tonight on Geopod, we're not discussing politics. We are examining authority in transition. And joining me is security analyst Jianjong Thapa, and we begin with a simple but uncomfortable question. Is Nepal managing this transition, or simply moving through it, hoping for the best? Welcome to the show, Mr. Thapa.
Thank you so much.
As an expert of security, as you are, from security perspective, transitions are often moments when authorities is shared, borrowed or contested. Let me come to the very core question. Who in Nepal today holds the authority to decide, act and enforce? And where does that authority become uncertain?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. Second, let me begin with a disclaimer. So I'm not here, I don't represent any groups or organizations, so whatever I say here are my personal viewpoints. The second part about my disclaimer is I'm not here to tell you the truth. I'm here to tell you, share with you my perspective. Because as you know, truth has various gradients. Your truth, my truth, the absolute truth, the temporary truth, right?
And multiple truths.
Multiple truths. And so I'll just share with you some of my perspectives based on my education, my experience. So in terms of transition, the transitional authority, I think we need to first examine where authority is derived, at least from a state-centric perspective. There's a constitutional element to it. There's sometimes a legal element to it. Sometimes there's moral authority. But most of the times, state has something called the monopoly of force. The social contract between the governed and the government is derived from that social contract. And the social contract usually has that element of force. At the moment, I think the way we need to look at it, whatever happened, the Zenzi revolt and the subsequent government that was formed, I think you were trying to ask me about that. So if you examine that process, the way I think we should look at it is internally, I think the government has been accepted. Internationally, it's been recognized. But constitutionally, it's not recognized. So that's the state of authority of the government at this point. The monopoly of violence or force, I think, still rests with the army and the security forces because they're still existent, they're still functional. But there's this very ambiguous nature in terms of who authorizes the monopoly of violence. The best way to describe that is the position or the portfolio of the chief district officer, right? Because we have debated, discussed about the Zenzi revolt, and we've always questioned who actually authorized the police to fire upon the protesters. And the accusation or the allegation has been leveled against the CDO. So there's this ambiguity and that level of question mark, especially in terms of where does the CDO come in and whether the CDO is actually recognized by our constitution or not. So there are these blurry lines, but there are also these distinct features such as the internal acceptance and the international recognition.
How much ambiguity itself is a risk to vulnerability to a state, Mr. Pepper?
It is because it's based on acceptance. The way the state functions is whoever governs has to have a majority acceptance rate. The majority has to accept whoever governs. So that social contract is derived from the acceptance by the governed. At this point, it is very difficult to tell because we cannot calibrate what is the level of acceptance at this point. There was a revolt. There was apparently an online selection process. We don't know how it was done. But there was a distillation process that brought a candidate to the fore, and that person was selected and was later appointed as the prime minister. And then that prime minister went on to select few other ministers. So that has been the process. For example, the previous entities or people that were part of the government have repeatedly said, some of them have recognized it, others have not recognized it. I think that's the status quo at this point. But like I said, internally it's, I think, more or less accepted. Internationally it's been more or less recognized.
So a lot of water has flown after all those episodes that we were witness to, right? If you look around, just to pan through, there's a lot of caution in the air.
Sure.
Amongst, in and around all these stakeholders. So just out of curiosity, what does the security lens say? At what point does institutional caution stop stabilizing the system and rather, weakens it?
If I got your question right, you're asking about how the institutions are looking at the situation.
How
right?
much caution is okay for a system to work?
I think caution is not the right word. I think preparation is the right word for a system, because When you look at a system, the system prepares for these scenarios, anticipates change, and anticipates the threats that bedevil our system. So the institutions are built to anticipate these changes, these upheavals. These also look at the opportunities that actually arise from the contextual changes. So I think the best way to sort of describe the institutional framework in terms of anticipating a future is preparation. Are our institutions prepared for it? To a certain extent. Some of them are, some of them aren't, I think. But the most prepared and the most endowed institution is definitely the Nepali Army. We saw that quite clearly during the Zenzi revolt as well. The level of professionalism, the level of restraint, the level of mobilization, and the level of outcome that was that we witnessed was unprecedented. One thing that I can basically attest to is the fact that the Nepali Army has always been our crisis manager in every single crisis, and it has gotten us out of all these crises. If you go back to 2015, during the blockade, it was the military diplomacy that got us out of the blockade. And right before that was a major earthquake. The Army deployed within 30 minutes because everyone was assembled at the Army headquarters when our bureaucracy was missing, our political class was missing, every other entity of the government was missing, but the Army, along with two of the sister organizations, came to the fore. COVID, if you look at COVID was a massive crisis for us. The Army got us out of that crisis in multiple ways, all the way from dead body management, because it's not the role of the Army to do dead body management. It shouldered that responsibility because no one else was willing to take it. Right? It was a very scary prospect, but they shouldered that. But the one thing that basically tells us, even during COVID, that the Army became the most reliable institution was when the three major powers, the ambassadors, the envoys of all three major powers, were hell-bent on providing their assistance to the Army chief rather than to the Ministry of Health or the Prime Minister's office. The Chinese, the Americans, and the Indians would not give the COVID assistance to anybody within the government, but only to the Army chief, because they said, if we don't give it to the Army, this assistance is going to go to waste. Then fast forward to the Zenzi revolt. The level of professionalism that they demonstrated during that episode is something that the world is studying today. Not a single bullet was fired during that whole episode. Not one looting, not one excessive use of force. But they got us out of it within like 48 hours after all that took place. So I think Army as an institution, I think I've always maintained that they're prepared better than the others. But also they also have a lot of gaps, I think, in terms of, especially in terms of the capability gaps. The Army, I don't think, has been provided vehicles for the last 7 years. Our air assets were quite lacking in that front. So, but overall, I think it's the preparation.
The kind of picture that you portray right now, not everybody shares the same view, right? Sure. So if you could shed more light on this, where exactly or when exactly a line is drawn as to when to act? Because in situations like this, you know, there is always this big dilemma for any state or for any institutions as to when to act. Sometimes earlier action causes consequences. Sure. Sometimes a delayed one causes consequences. So what is there anything in black and white that draws that line as to when that action should begin?
It's about decision making, right? This whole process is about when do you make the decisions and what do you make, what brings you to that decision point, I think is the main question. So when the state or the institutions act, they act on certain premises. For example, assumptions. They're based on assumptions. And they're also based on options, right? So the way the decision making is made, at least at the government level, is you have certain assumptions, you have certain options, and there are consequences to all of those options or those assumptions. So whoever decides, ultimately decides based on these three variables. The other part about decision making is we as humans, we make decisions almost on a daily basis. For example, my decision to come here to give an interview is based on a certain assumption and based on a certain consequence. But those that are part of the greater strategic decision-making circle, they need to have that level of training, that education, that experience, so that they are able to decide on our behalf at those critical moments. And the decision-making is always, I think, based on it's on accountability as well. You have to be accountable to the people, and it has to be proportionate, right? And also cost effective. So every decision has a cost associated with it. You cannot make a decision that will cost too much to the state, to our treasury, not just in terms of the money, but also in terms of the outcomes. So there isn't actually like a finite way of decision making. It's just based on these three variables, which change because the assumptions can change, the consequences can change, and the options can change. So it's really depends on all of these factors combined. I think the cumulative result of all of this.
Who ultimately decides when restraints give way to intervention? Is it political leadership or is it the security command? What does a standard practice or our national policy premise say?
So usually there's something called a national security culture. Every state should have one. We unfortunately don't have one. There's something called a National Security Council, which is right across from the studio. But it has remained dormant for ever since, meaning we don't have that national security culture. We did appoint a national security advisor some months ago, but then he resigned, and that's the end of it. The policy making, the decisions are basically it's a two-way street because decisions are based on the assumption and the options provided by the security institutions. For example, the Prime Minister is not going to be aware of everything that happens in the country, so he has to be fed by the system, and the system is the institutions that actually gather that and analyze it and then present it to them. So it's a two-way street. I don't think it's the Prime Minister is calling the shots all the time, or it's the security institutions bulldozing their agenda. So it's, I think, somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's a finite, distinct line in that. But in a democratic society, it's always the elected officials that ultimately are supposed to call the shots based on
apparatus together, right?
Yes.
That's exactly what you meant. Now, from the security doctrine perspective, was this restraint again a deliberate strategic choice?
I mean, it's very difficult to sort of come to a conclusion because we don't have evidence in terms of what actually happened behind the closed doors. But from what we witnessed on that day, I think it was a strategic choice that was made, strategic restraint that actually enabled whatever happened after that, consequently, because there were a lot of ambiguities. From what I've heard, the decision-making was not, at least from the Prime Minister's level. For example, what I heard was the Prime Minister was advised that this was coming, so a curfew at an earlier hour possibly could have avoided that. Him going on the national television basically apologizing or owning to that particular incident, the prior incident. And more than that, I think it's the failure of the intelligence apparatus as well, and the political circle, especially the Prime Minister and the people in the government, not subscribing to the intelligence reports that were fed previously, saying that this day was all forthcoming, one way or the other. From what I know from my sources, I think the army and the intelligence had at one point, or had been telling the government that we could be facing another round of revolt or this kind of episode, since we had seen some things that happened in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So it was going almost like a full circle. And it could eventually come because there was a lot of resentment, a lot of grievances. But it seems like the people did not heed to those intelligence reports. And this is what we saw. But I think going back to what you asked me about restraint, I think it was a strategic choice, which, if you look at it now, has enabled us, especially you and I, to sit together and have this interview in this manner. Or else I don't know what would have happened after that. I mean, I'm glad to see that the studio still remains intact, whereas some of the buildings were burnt in the front, I think. But that was a result of a conscious choice that was made by the Nepalese army and the manner in which they mobilized. So thanks to them.
So you, as a security analyst, would term it a strategy gone right?
I would say so, because I think there's been a lot of allegation, especially against the army, saying that they were not able to safeguard or protect a lot of these vital installations, why they were not able to do that. I think we're asking the wrong question. The question we need to be asking is, how could an army of a third world country operate in a manner where they were able to stabilize the most destructive episode in our national history within like 48 hours? Give the power back to the civilians, stabilize the situation, and not have any other untoward incident after they stabilize the situation. How were they able to do it? What allowed them not to have that power lust? What allowed the soldiers not to be trigger happy? What allowed that level of restraint and professionalism after such an opportunity, which landed in the chief's lap? Meaning, had it been any other country, which we have seen in Africa, the power has been grabbed by the military leaders. But how is it that a country or a military of the size, the scope, be able to deliver this unprecedented sort of outcome? I mean, this is unprecedented in terms of global history. And as far as I know, many militaries around the world today, and I can tell you with utmost confidence and conviction, that they are studying the Nepalese army's stabilization effort throughout the world. We're just asking the wrong question. Because yes, there were loopholes, there were shortcomings. Of course there were. But overall, the outcome they were able to deliver to this country is absolutely unprecedented.
Fast forward to today, this moment, Mr. Thapa, when the nation is gathering itself, rising from the rubble or from a complete reset mode to gaining a little momentum, right? From security point of view, certainly planning is ultimately about prioritization, because if you prioritize everything, none truly becomes, right? So if you were advising the state today at this moment, what would you identify as the strongest, most serious security risk during this phase of transition?
So, there's a saying that Nepal has always been in this perpetual loop of transitions. So the first thing is, the risk is always that we will go into another transition. There's always a risk of that. But I've identified a few risks, which are both internal and stem from external context as well. The first one is internal discord. The level of polarization that has taken place or is about to take place may bring us to a whole different level of threat landscape. So that's number one, the internal discord and polarization. Second is international influence, international imposition, and international intervention. That is something that we want to avoid at all costs. Influence is always there because of the money they give, because of their power, because of their leverage. Impositions do take place, but intervention is something we want to avoid at all costs. Because on that fateful night, had the Nepalese army failed to stabilize, the consequences we know what the consequences would have been. There were international forces ready to be dropped in and take over, right? So that's something we need to avoid. The other part is international isolation, which is something we need to avoid at all costs. We already know that visa restrictions are already happening because of what just happened. We need to avoid that international isolation because we need access to the world. The more access we have, that brings us more security. And international investment. We don't want international investors to, divest from our economy. We want more people to come in, invest freely, and we want more international investment to come in. There's also this thing I'm sure you've heard about, FATF. We're already on that gray list. We need to avoid getting on that blacklist because we're in this transition phase. Everything is, sort of not steady. So hope the government focuses on that because if we get on the blacklist, then we're going to have a lot of difficulties. During transition, when the authority has eroded, there's always this element of criminality that comes in. So we want to avoid being a safe haven for criminals, terrorist groups, or any other nefarious groups that may be inimical to our national interest or the national interest of our neighbors.
How do you see this? Are the quieter structural risks being overlooked because visible unrest commands attention?
At this point, we do have a very combustible external environment. We also have a very combustible internal environment as well because the society is polarized in multiple fault lines. So we have, we have religious fault lines, we have regional fault lines, we have political fault lines. So the number of fault lines that afflict this particular nation and at this particular point are quite a few. And it comes also at a time when our public security system is at the weakest. Let's not forget the day when all our police personnel were, driven out of the police stations, chased out. Their guns were looted. Still, probably 500 still out in the streets. The inmates escaped. Almost 14,000 of them escaped. We still have to bring back almost 5,000. So that's the context that we're currently operating. So that brings about a massive challenge that we have not sort of endured ever in our national history. And it's even worse than the time when the Maoists were there because on a single day, the level of displacement of the national police and the APF to a certain extent was massive. But there's also a good side to that story is in Bangladesh, a similar thing happened. But in Bangladesh, the police did not show up for almost a year. And the number of policemen that were killed after the uprising, they're estimating in thousands, right? So that public security system completely collapsed. Whereas in our case, the police, one of the most iconic pictures was this traffic policeman who came for his duty in his civis, right? In his civilian attire. Because his uniform had been stolen or robbed, and he's doing his duty in flip-flops. That's the situation. Our police is back on track, but we also have a lot of shortcomings. The Nepal police is, I think, has a huge capability gap because for the police, it's about response. So when you ask the police to come, they have to respond, and for them to respond, they have to go to the place where the incident took place, and most of the vehicles have all been torched. The bikes have been torched. So now they have a huge capability gap in terms of response. And that's something we have not ever been able to fulfill very quickly. Even if you look at, from a public security point of view, the biggest risk is a traffic accident. The number of lives that are lost due to traffic accidents are the highest. At this point, most of our traffic policemen are in a very vulnerable stage because there's no traffic outpost for these guys. So they're in the middle of the street. They remain quite unprotected. So that's still ongoing. But coming back to the police, I think their capability gap needs to be addressed very quickly, especially in terms of vehicles, in terms of other equipment, gadgets, training, of course.
How do you weigh this, the street mobilization versus the institutional paralysis? How is this going to have a toll on the authorities at this point of time?
If you look back at our history, we have had these upheavals in the past, but we have not witnessed anything like this before because we drafted a very inclusive, what we labeled it as a very inclusive constitution. But there are loopholes even in the constitution for scenarios like something like this. And let me give you an example. A PM, a prime minister, can be changed if the prime minister dies, if he resigns, if he's voted out of office. But there is no scenario where a prime minister is chased out of his office or has to flee in a helicopter by a mob or by a crowd which is unhappy. So and then how do you sort of address that constitutionally? So I think there are these, as Donald Rumsfeld once used to say, we live in a world where there's known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, right? So I think we as a nation, we as a state, we need to have better preparation for those known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, because the more prepared you are for these unanticipated events, I think you can address them. So that level of scenario planning, that level of, but it all comes back to the national security culture, developing a national security culture that actually is constantly looking at threats upon our nation, planning and informing our system, saying like, these are the threats that we're anticipating, we're enduring, and allowing people in the government to sort of be abreast about what's actually happening within the country and outside the country as well.
We're discussing the nature of the event and the transition, the event that led to this transition. Very unprecedented, maybe not calculated at all by the state or any agencies, right? And one of the major characters was how digitally driven this was, and then a sort of a leaderless public movement. How does this change the state's traditional calculus of control and response? How do you think now the institutions, the major stakeholders will rise up to this occasion, because we are almost not even halfway through this transition?
One of the things that the state has to prepare for is to take into account that we as human beings, we as nationals now inhabit two different spaces. One is the physical space, and the other is the digital space. We have footprints that you can see, but we also have digital footprints that we need to be prepared to, sort of track down. So I think that's the context that we'll be operating in. And the digital domain is a lot more critical now, because your wealth, my wealth, is not in, the denominations are in data, right? So data is a big part of our national security architecture. We need to protect and protect our data infrastructure, because our wealth is, for example, if you have 1,000 rupees, it's now in data. If someone with the ability to sort of intrude that infrastructure and erase that data makes you vulnerable, makes all of us vulnerable. So I think the state needs to plan, prepare for that, contingency that we now live in a dual space world where digital domain is also a very critical factor for every single human being.
How much are our institutions equipped to track and trace these footprints, and also to track to understand the crowd dynamics of unidentified leadership? How equipped are we?
In our case, we are quite primitive in that front. Our cyber, we've always been sort of lobbying for something called a cyber command, where we look at the cyber-related threats from a very unified point of view, where we bring the army, the police, the APF, the intelligence together, and come up with a very integrated form of, cyber threat identification and threat mitigation sort of approach. It's not there. Police has a cyber bureau which looks pretty much at crime when it happens, but it's very, it's not preventative. So it's more like a response point of view. If your system is hacked, then you, as someone that has been, whose data has been compromised, you'd go to police and report, and then they'll take action. But we don't have it in a manner where it is viewed from a national security perspective, saying like, what are the threats, cyber threats that could affect us? For example, I think yesterday or the day before, we heard that the National Election Commission's website was hacked, right? I mean, we're holding elections next very soon. The threat of someone intruding or our systems or altering our systems in favor of someone or against someone sort of completely distorts the outcome. So you can see the threat that sort of lies in front of us.
We are at the moment looking forward to the House of Representatives elections, right? And elections most often are seen as political solutions, and especially at transitional periods like this, certainly it's treated as an exit from uncertainty. But for security planners, they are also pressure points. While becoming an exit, can it also amplify risks?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think the best way to look at elections, I think elections are events that are periodic. So, it's a cycle. It's not something that comes and goes completely away. It's periodic, so it's cyclical. And you need to understand the dynamics of what elections are all about. Elections are competitions, right? Between contestants, they're contestants, and they're competing for something. And what are they competing for? It's votes. And why do they compete for votes? Because those votes will sort of take these people into halls of power. And once you get to power, you have access to the treasury, you have the authority to make decisions. So it's a very critical commodity that everyone is vying for. And so inherently by nature, elections are supposed to be a competition. Competition can always lead to conflict, right? Any incidents can spiral out of control and sort of evolve into a crisis. So that's the dynamic of elections. But then we also need to take into account what elections have delivered to us in the past. We've had several rounds of elections, and if I may submit, we've probably had 16 governments in the past 16 years, right? Has that brought about stability? Probably not. So we've gone from one level of instability to another. And in fact, we have almost tried every concoction, political concoction in that spectrum. The right with the left with the center with the right. Every single permutation under the sun has been tried. And even the last permutation with the Nepali Congress and the UML, the two largest parties, which at one point was thought inconceivable, we saw that. And we saw what happened, right? So elections, I don't think will necessarily, what's the best way to put it? Will not necessarily bring about, good outcomes or sustainable outcomes. It can actually amplify risks. And the process of election is also a very risk-laden process, because if you look at it, let me lay out some of the risks. Clashes between contestants, ballot box looting, harassment, extortion, abduction, killings. These are all inherently part of that election cycle that we may witness. So any of these events or incidents can easily spiral into crises and much bigger risks. So the way I look at it, as you rightly pointed out, elections may be leading us to a more legitimate, sustainable way forward, but it can also create that level of risk if any of these incidents sort of flare up into crises. This time it's going to be even more vicious because the level of polarization is extremely high. And let's not forget, elections are when people invest. There's campaign financing. You have to invest. If you're a candidate, you cannot just go and, you need to print posters, flags. They cost money. So it's a heavy investment for a candidate. So, and the candidate always tries to win the, election because he's heavily invested in it, right? So that level of competition is even going to be fierce this time.
Yes, this brings me to the major matter, the political parties. When political parties raise concerns about election security concern beforehand, right, should institutions read them as early warnings or political messaging or both?
the security institutions have to read into it anyhow, because those are the candidates that are going to be competing for elections. But when they say it's an insecure environment, you have to read it. How would I read it? I would read it as their own personal insecurity, looking at the context, because most of the older political parties feel insecure to go back to their constituencies, because we've heard incidents of them being chased away or not being unwelcome. So that level of insecurity is there. But there's also, I think, financial insecurity, because campaign financing requires, someone has to contribute. So how many people are now willing to contribute to the campaigns of these older political parties? That's also a question, right? So the physical insecurity, the financial insecurity, and the insecurity also relating to one particular episode of the revolt is the guns and the inmates, because most of the guns that were looted have not come back. We've not been able to bring it back into our fold. So that creates an insecure environment. But also the number of inmates that have escaped, criminals. So that creates a more insecure environment for possibly for some of these candidates, maybe not for all, but the institutions need to read into that and plan accordingly so that they can instill that sense of security so that they are able to go into elections without fear.
Mm-hmm. As you said earlier, this is not the first time Nepal is experiencing transition. We've passed through several transitions, prolonged ones, and transitions of many other natures. But this one is happening or unfolding in a far harsher international environment, right? So from a security perspective, which assumptions about Nepal's strategic space no longer hold today?
The assumptions that we are shielded by two giant powers no longer holds true, because there's another power as well. Because at least the perception, at the perception level, our people feel there's a third power that has intervened or that has fiddled around during that revolt. So we are no longer shielded by just these two superpowers. The second assumption, I think, that no longer holds true is the fact that we only have physical borders. We also have something called a digital border. So because of our digital domain, we also have a digital border that we need to protect. So that no longer holds true. And I think the third one is the fact that the assumption that all the Nepalese reside within the Nepalese territory, that no longer holds true, meaning the voters. So we have elections, but a large number of our population resides all over the world, right? So Nepal is not just within Nepali territory, but Nepali nationals being all over the world. So that assumption that Nepal is just here no longer holds true, I think, because both in terms of a voter perspective, but also in terms of our national security perspective, because the security of a national is paramount. And if you have such large number of nationals that are residing elsewhere, if anything untoward were to happen to them, the obligation of the state does not end at our borders, because it transcends that. It's, whatever happens to our nationals in the US, in the Middle East, in Japan, Korea, we need to step forward. So that assumption that we are only bound or obligated to the people in Nepal no longer holds true, I think.
Mm-hmm. And is non-alignment still a protective posture for Nepal, or has it become more porous?
I have a completely different viewpoint on non-alignment because I don't think it's no longer an option for us. It never was. I think non-alignment is something we as a nation, we were very good at putting up a facade, saying that we are part of the non-aligned movement, we are non-aligned, But let me try to sort of not necessarily negate that, but paint a more clearer picture of non-alignment. We are the only country on this planet whereby we allowed our nationals to serve in the armed forces of 2 nuclear countries through an agreement. And you know who the 2 countries are, right? The Indians and the Brits. So for the Brits, we've been doing for hundreds of years. We have something called a tripartite agreement, which allows men to also be in the Indian Armed Services. Name one country on the planet that has this kind of agreement, right? If you look at alliances, alliances are usually military in nature, correct? There's no military alliance whereby a country is sending its nationals, allowing its nationals to don the uniform of a different country. We allow that. We actually have 2 countries that have military bases within the country. The Indians have a military base. They have their camps in Pokhara. The Brits have in Pokhara and Dharan as well, in Kathmandu as well. So that whole facade of non-alignment, I don't think it applies to us. We've never been a non-aligned country. In fact, we've always been a multi-aligned country, but we have propagated ourselves and positioned ourselves as a non-aligned country. I mean, people may not agree to that, but that's actually a fact. And just in addition to that, the Indians have come up with this new global outlook called multi-alignment, which Jaishankar has pronounced. They've also said we're going to be strategically autonomous. I don't know how that works. Autonomy and alignment I don't know how that goes together, but I don't think non-alignment is any longer an option for us. It's never been our actual reality, but we propagated ourselves as that.
Now, as ground shake here in the domestic front, much is evolving around us as well. From warfares to day-to-day living, everything is like evolving and changing in a spearheaded manner, right? So this brings us to the last and one of the most important questions from the security perspective, Mr. Thapa. What kind of the world do you as an expert see Nepal is actually transitioning into, and if our institutions are prepared for that world?
I've always wanted to answer that question. It's usually said that we have transitioned into a multipolar world. I don't buy that. I think we have moved into a non-polar world. There are no long. Let me explain it. I always say there's South Pole, there's North Pole, and there's Nepal. We're a pole of our own because we're so unique in so different, so many ways. We are a pole of our own because we're the only country on this planet where we have annoyed, aggravated, or angered almost all the nuclear countries at the same time. So we are, of a different breed. But the world, I think, that we're transitioning into is a non-polar world, which is very combustible, very volatile, very fractured. It's almost like a Hobbesian world where it's, nasty, brutish, short, solitary, poor. Because if you look at what is happening all over the world, it's almost transitioning into that. And if I may tell our viewers, I highly recommend everyone to watch the Canadian Prime Minister's speech at the World Economic Forum. And also the fact that I want to mention, there's a saying, you're either at the table or you become a menu, right? You're on the menu. There was a World Economic Forum meeting where I don't think we were represented. So that, I think, is something we need to aspire to, and we need to plan for that. So it's a very volatile world that we're transitioning into because everyone is out for themselves. The global power of the United States has almost recoiled. It has a whole different set of priorities. The global order, as we used to call it, the rules-based global order, I think is degenerating into a global disorder. Are the big powers going to, subscribe to the rules-based order? Probably not. The UN system has become completely toothless, so that multilateralism, collective security, the idea of collective security almost is eroding faster than we can, think of. So it's a very difficult world we are transitioning into, and we need to plan for it. Hopefully our leaders will have that level of dexterity to navigate these tumultuous waters that lay ahead of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thaba, for coming over, sparing your very valuable time and lending us that expert security analyst lens to understand the dynamics around us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
What emerges from this discussion is clear. Transitions are dangerous, not because change is happening, but when authority, timing and perception fall out of sync. Nepal's challenge is not the absence of stability, but the discipline required to manage exposure, internally and externally, in a far less forgiving world. That is the security test of this transition, and that is it from Geopart this week. Goodbye.
Human beings have made drastic progress in the sector of handicrafts with the development of civilization from the Stone Age until the 21st century. These include and are not limited to works of art, sculptures, wood and metal crafts. These handicrafts have also found religious, historic, cultural and archaeological acceptance and significance. Religious texts have identified the attraction of human settlements in the mountainous region of Nepal, which has always remained an independent sovereign nation. Ramapithecus human remains found in Butwal of West Nepal clarifies that human settlement had begun in Nepal more than 10 million years ago. We find historic references of works of handicrafts made by those living in this region. Such Nepali handicrafts are artistic and useful, therefore also successful in gaining international appreciation. Instead of the modern handicrafts, Nepal is well introduced in the international community by its traditional and historic works of art and craft. Millions of tourists who visit Nepal every year observe, study and relish the traditional handicrafts available at religious shrines. The high-quality woods brought from local forests are seasoned before being carved. Nepali woodcrafts are not only popular inside the country, but also have a demand abroad and therefore are exported. In addition to sculptures of gods and goddesses, artistic doors and windows, among other furniture, are made from wood in Nepal. Best examples of Nepali woodcraft can be taken as the artistic carvings at palaces, temples and other religious shrines in Kathmandu, Lalitpur and Bhaktapur. The 6th century woodcraft present at Rudravarna Mahavihar in Okubahal of Lalitpur is considered the oldest. Nepali woodcraft continues to thrive with the creativity, dedication and effort of trained artists. Artist Punyaraj Tuladhar, popular around the world, shares his experience. Lalitpur is popular around the world for its metal craft in Nepal. Works of metal craft produced here had a great demand in countries including Bhutan, Japan, China and European nations. Metal statues are developed using two methods in Nepal: repose art and lost wax process, both widely popular around the world. Repose art is a metal working technique in which a malleable metal, silver, copper and brass among others, is shaped by hammering from the reverse side to create a design in low relief. Small sheets of metal are cut based on required measurement to form different organs of statues before being welded together. Designs and patterns are then carved into the structure. Gold is plated in some works such as metal craft as well. Such metal sheets are also used in the roof of temples and other religious shrines. Lost wax process is the technique by which a metal sculpture, often silver, gold, brass or bronze, is cast from an original sculpture of wax made of honeycomb. Molten metal is poured into a mold that has been created by means of a wax model. Once the mold is made, the wax model is melted and drained away. In the second phase, the metal sculpture is cleaned with different machines or equipment. After filling of the sculpture, it is then plated with gold or painted with colors based on the requirements. Most of such sculptures are found in Buddhist and Hindu religious shrines. Globally recognized senior artist Krodh Kala Shiromani Kalu Kumale shares his experience. Existing sculptures present in Nepal and at museums abroad prove that the works of sculptures have a long history in the country. Sculptures made using the lost wax process have a huge demand in China and other countries and continue to be exported. Okubahal, Nagbahal, Haugal and Tangal, among other places, are the pioneers in metal craft. Likewise, metal crafts of Tansen in Palpa, Chainpur Most of such sculptures are made from the stones found in local hills, including Hatibon, Mochegao, Tika Bhairav, Godavari and Kharpa, among others. Senior artist Dharmaraj Shakya says that Nepal's stone art has a unique identity. Of the stone sculptures found so far, a sculpture of King Jaya Varma found in Harigaon and currently conserved at National Museum in Chhaoni is considered to be the oldest historic sculpture. Likewise, sculptures in Changu installed by King Mandev, another found in Tilganga near Pashupati, a sculpture of Vishnu Vikrant in Lazimpat, and the one at Budhanilkantha are also considered historic. Sculpture of Birupaksha Kirateshwar Mahadev at Pashupati Aryaghat, Vishwaroop at Changu, Garud Sayan Vishnu sculpture, Palanchuk Bhagwati, Gazalakshmi of Lalitpur, Chashal Hiti and Krishna Mandir of Patan, among others, are considered the best stone sculptures of Nepal. Terracotta sculptures and masks, among other artworks, are made from clay. Terracotta works are thought to have been in existence in Nepal from a long time. According to historians and archaeologists, terracotta works found during a recent excavation administered by the Department of Archaeology were from the 2nd century BC. In recent practices, terracotta works are made before the development of metal sculptures. Different goods used in daily life are made from terracotta works. In addition to the sculptures of religious figures, products such as cups and plates, among other utensils, are also made from terracotta technique, while they are sold in domestic and foreign markets as well. Artists who have been working with terracotta for ages live in Thimi of Bhaktapur, Dang and Kapilvastu. Popular artist Gopal Kalapremi says the creativity and dedication of Nepali artists has been uplifting terracotta works in and outside of Nepal. Pauba art is made in the Kathmandu Valley and is considered as a traditional art form. This form of art is known as Thanga in Tibet. In Tibetan language, documentation and archives of gods and goddesses is called Thanku or Thanga. In this form of art, color from natural minerals is used to paint the pictures of religious figures on cloth. The large figure of main god and goddesses is placed at the center, while remaining gods and goddesses are placed in relatively smaller figures at the other parts. The background of this form of art includes different kinds of flowers, clouds, trees, and birds and animals. An artwork of Ratnasambhav Buddha conserved at the County Museum in Los Angeles of the United States of America is considered to be the oldest Paubha art, which was developed in the 13th century. The Amitabha Buddha art of the 13th century, also at the County Museum alongside Vishnu Mandala of 1420, and the 19th century's Sahas Bhujalokeshwar saved at the National Museum in Chhaoni, are considered to be Nepal's best Paubha artworks. The demand of Paubha artworks is increasing in Nepal and the foreign market. Popular and senior artist Lok Chitrakar says continuous efforts of talented artists has helped increase the popularity of Nepali Paubha art. Nepali handicrafts have established a significant position in the international community for their traditional, religious, social, historic and archaeological richness. Nepal Academy of Fine Arts has been conducting significant tasks in regards to conservation, promotion and development of Nepali handicrafts. Active involvement of experienced, skilled and talented artists, along with their devotion and sacrifices, have been rejuvenating Nepali handicrafts and helping establish a unique and superior identity of Nepal in the international community.
The US and Israel continue to bombard Iran with explosions reported in Qom and Tehran hours after Israeli attacks on well facilities caused toxic smoke across the Iranian capital. Explosions and towering plumes of smoke were reported in southern Beirut as well following a series of Israeli airstrikes. The strikes are part of the ongoing escalation in the region, which has already seen clashes between Israel and Iranian-backed groups. Iran too has carried out a series of retaliatory missile and drone strikes against targets in the Gulf and beyond in response to the continued US and Israeli military action in its territory. Iran has blamed European countries, including France, for creating conditions that led to the United States and Israeli attacks which triggered a war with the Islamic Republic. Iran's foreign ministry's spokesperson Ismail Baghi also alleged the attacks aimed at partitioning their country to take illegal possession of their well reaches.
کشورهای اروپایی در برهه‌های متاسفانه به شکل‌گیری این روند کمک کردند. زمانی که به جای اصرار بر حاکمیت قانون، به جای ایستادگی در برابر قلدرمآبی و زیاده‌خواهی آمریکا، با اونها همکلام و همنوا شدند در شورای امنیت سازمان ملل در رابطه با بحث بازگرداندن تحریم‌ها و همه این موارد در کنار همدیگه باعث شد که طرف‌های آمریکایی و رژیم صهیونیستی جری بشن در ارتکاب جنایاتشون و قانون شکنی.
President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, meanwhile said the ripples of war in the Middle East are being already felt across Europe through rising energy prices and impacts on trade.
We can now see a regional conflict with unintended consequences. And the spillover is already a reality today, whether on energy or finance, trade or transport, or the displacement of people.
The latest escalation in the conflict has raised fears of wider regional war as tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States continue to intensify. Oil prices have jumped more than 25% to their highest levels since mid-2022 as the ongoing Middle East war enters its 10th day. Benchmark crude oil prices exceeded $100 a barrel. Energy markets also reacted sharply with futures contracts jumping more than 20% in early trading, while gold and other commodities also saw increased volatility as investors sought safe haven assets. The surge reflects supply concerns arising from escalating clashes in key oil-producing regions, with traders anticipating potential disruptions to exports from the Gulf. G7 nations, meanwhile, are holding an emergency meeting later today to discuss surging oil prices amid the escalating US-Israeli war with Iran. US President Donald Trump, however, dismissed the spike as a small price to pay to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat, reiterating his insistence that the rise is temporary. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer had said the UK is working with the US on the war in the Middle East. It follows a call between Starmer and US President Donald Trump on 8th of March, during which the two discussed the conflict in the Middle East after Trump insulted the British Prime Minister over his initial refusal to have any role in the war.
The US and the UK are working together every single day, as they always have. Obviously, in relation to Iran, the US are now using UK air bases under the agreement that we've reached. Decisions about what's in Britain's best interests are decisions for the Prime Minister of Britain. And that's how I've approached all of the questions and all the decisions that I've had to make. It is really important. That's a fundamental principle.
Some countries across Asia have announced measures to deal with the impact of soaring global energy costs caused by the US-Israel war with Iran, including capping petrol prices. East Asian nations have been hit especially hard by the conflict due to their reliance on energy that comes through the key Strait of Hormuz sea route. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been appointed to succeed his father as the new head of the Islamic Republic. The younger Khamenei was named Supreme Leader by the top clerical body, the Assembly of Experts, in a statement published shortly after midnight on Monday in Iran. Other contenders for the top position had included Ali Reza Arafi, one of 3 members of the interim council running the country, hardliner Mohsen Araki, and even Hassan Khomeini, the grandson of the founder of the Islamic Republic Republic in 1979. But ultimately, the assembly settled on 56-year-old Mojtaba Khamenei, born on 8th September 1969 in the holy city of Mashhad in eastern Iran. Mojtaba Khamenei is one of 6 children of the late supreme leader. His father was killed aged 86 just over a week ago in Tehran, became supreme leader in 1989. He is the only child of the former supreme leader to hold a public position despite having no official post. He is regarded as close to conservatives, notably because of his ties with the Revolutionary Guard, the ideological arm of the Islamic Republic's military. The U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on Mojtaba Khamenei in 2019 during President Donald Trump's first term, saying he represented the supreme leader despite never being elected or appointed to a government position aside from work in the office of his father. U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted cautiously to Iran appointing Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader, saying he is not happy and will decide the war's course with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel has warned the new leader could be a target as the U.S.-Iran conflict escalates. NATO has begun its biennial drills in the Arctic, this time placing more emphasis on the role of civilians in supporting the military at a time of high tension over U.S. President Donald Trump's push to take over Greenland from fellow NATO member Denmark. The drills, named Cold Response, focus on defending the alliance and European Arctic, where NATO members Norway and Finland that share a border with Russia, and will run from March 9 to 19 this time. The exercise has now become part of Arctic Sentry, the NATO mission to strengthen its presence in the polar region that was launched to diffuse tensions with Trump over Greenland. Trump insists the U.S. needs Greenland to fend off threats from Russian and Chinese interest in the Arctic and that Denmark cannot ensure its security. The governments of both Denmark and Greenland say the island is not for sale. This year, some 25,000 troops from 14 nations, including the U.S. and Denmark, will take part in the cold response, mostly across northern Norway and Finland. The U.S. is expected to have some 4,000 troops present. South Sudan's fragile healthcare system is being pushed to the brink after years of natural disasters, corruption, and armed conflict severely weakened the country's medical infrastructure. Much of the remaining health services are sustained by foreign donors, with more than 80% of the healthcare support provided by international organizations and non-governmental organizations, including the International Committee of the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders. However, the Red Cross warns that the current assistance only meets a fraction of the country's needs. The organization says international aid only covers a very small part of the needs that the population are facing. The situation has worsened with the arrival of thousands of refugees fleeing the ongoing conflict in neighboring Sudan, placing an additional strain on an already overstretched medical system. Health workers say hospitals and clinics across South Sudan are struggling with shortage of staff, leaving millions of people with limited access to basic healthcare services.
The latest search for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which went missing 12 years ago in one of aviation's greatest enduring mysteries, concluded in January without yielding any findings. Flight MH370 vanished on March 8, 2014, while traveling from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people on board, most of them Chinese nationals. Despite multiple international search operations over the past decade, the aircraft has never been found. Meanwhile, family members of Chinese passengers who were aboard the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 are demanding greater transparency from the Malaysian government after the latest search for the aircraft ended without results. A day after the 12th anniversary of the Boeing 777's disappearance, relatives of the victims met officials at China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing to press for clearer information about the investigation and the recently concluded search operation. Following the meeting, the families walked to the Malaysian embassy, where they delivered a letter criticizing what they described as a lack of communication and transparency regarding the latest search efforts. Relatives say they will continue to demand answers until the fate of the flight and its passengers is fully determined. A team from the Saudi Conjoined Twins program successfully performed a complex 12-hour surgery to separate Somali conjoined twins Rahma and Ramla at King Abdullah Specialist Children's Hospital, officials said Monday. The procedure, conducted in 8 stages, involved 36 consultants, specialists, and technicians from anesthesiology, pediatric surgery, urology, orthopedic surgery, and plastic surgery, along with nursing and technical staff. Dr. Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz Al Rabia, Supervisor General of the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center and head of the surgical team, described the operation as the 68th successful procedure under the Saudi Conjoined Twins program. Since its establishment, the program has treated 156 sets of conjoined twins from 28 countries, highlighting Saudi Arabia's role in international medical humanitarian work. Officials emphasized that the surgery demonstrates the kingdom's humanitarian and medical leadership at both regional and global levels. The medical team's dedication was hailed as a significant achievement for Saudi Arabia's healthcare sector. The twins' parents expressed gratitude to the Saudi leadership for the specialized care and hospitality extended during the daughter's treatment and wished continued security and prosperity for the kingdom. Rahma and Ramla are reported to be recovering steadily following the operation.
Officials in Colombia say thousands of people attempted to enter the country illegally from neighboring Venezuela during legislative elections despite temporary border closures imposed for security. Images released by the Colombian Defense Ministry show groups of people crossing a river at an unofficial border point in the northeastern department. According to Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez, around 2,400 individuals were detected attempting to cross into the Colombian territory, allegedly to vote in the elections. Sanchez said the crossings were illegal and warned that the authorities were investigating whether transport companies were involved in moving the individuals to polling stations after entering the country. The incident occurred as Colombians voted to elect a new Congress in a key vote that will save the final months of President Gustavo Petro's administration and test whether opposition parties can regain political ground. Officials said security forces were being deployed to the border area and the situation was later brought under control as investigations continue. Thousands of women marched through Istanbul of Turkey on International Women's Day, defying a ban on demonstrations imposed by officials. Protesters gathered in the city center and marched through the streets calling for women's rights and gender equality. The rally took place under a heavy police presence but passed largely without any major incidents. According to witnesses and local media reports, at least 6 people were detained by police towards the end of the demonstration. Participants said the march was part of a long tradition of activism for women's rights in Turkey, where campaigners have repeatedly taken to the streets and marched the aid despite restrictions. Activists say the annual demonstrations remain an important platform for demanding stronger protection for women and greater gender equality across the country. They also added that the march reflects growing determination among women to defend their rights and freedoms.
Competitors gathered in Surrey, United Kingdom for the annual wife-carrying race, a quirky sporting event that challenges teams to run up and down a steep hill while one partner carries the other. Participants raced across the course wearing crash helmets, with competitors navigating the demanding terrain as part of a tradition inspired by a sport that originated in Finland. One of the competitors, Hattie Cronin, whose team finished second, described the experience as physically intense. The event was won by Finnish competitor Teemu Tuovinen, who travelled from Finland to take part in the competition. Tuovinen said the victory was a dream come true after making the trip to the United Kingdom specifically for the race. The unusual contest continues to attract international participants and spectators, highlighting the growing popularity of the unconventional sport beyond its Finnish origins. The event draws growing international interest each year, with competitors traveling from across Europe to take part in the unusual hill race.
Annapurna Circuit Trek features in world's 10 best destinations and adventures. The trekking circuit is the choice of many trekkers as it offers both adventure along with mesmerizing view of mountain ranges. Arguably the best trekking circuit in the world, travelers get up close with dozens of mountains including the Annapurna, Dhaulagiri, Nilgiri. Annapurna Circuit ideally is a 14-day trek. The circuit passes through Lamjung, Manang, Mustang and Myagdi district, including Thorangla Pass as the highest point. Places including Thampus, Ghandruk and Poon Hill are part of this trekking circuit. The revered Muktinath shrine is also part of the circuit. Only foreigners were seen in this circuit few years back, but now domestic tourists are also flocking the area. If you are looking for a lifetime trekking experience, then pack your bags for Annapurna trekking circuit. Mardi Base Camp Trek, also part of the Annapurna circuit, is another alternative route for trekkers who can't afford time. Trekkers can be up close with mountains including the Annapurna Range, Dhaulagiri, Machapuchre and Manasalu in this circuit. This 7-day circuit is attracting many trekkers for obvious reasons.
Heaven above and angels below. This is the essence of Ruby Valley. Nestled in the northern part of Nepal's Dhading district, Ruby Valley is a hidden jewel surrounded on all sides by majestic mountain ranges. The landscape here is a feast for the eyes. White rhododendron blossoms paint the hillsides and sprawling rice fields shimmer under the sunlight. At about 300 kilometers from Kathmandu, the valley is a serene retreat rich in culture, tradition and natural beauty. Reaching Ruby Valley involves a remarkable trek that starts with a scenic journey from Kathmandu through Nuwakot and Rasuwa, winding towards the base of Ganesh Himal, the towering peak that watches over this land. The trek leads through dense pine and oak forests, terrace farmlands and vibrant local villages like Tipling, home to the Tamang community. These people live in harmony with nature, cultivating crops and raising livestock while keeping their rich traditions alive, welcoming visitors with warm hospitality and cultural performances.
Bendo Maya, Sari Sanga Sujiva, Bendo Maya, Bendo Maya, Deni Moje Tujiva, Bendo Maya, Bendo Maya, Wani Diri Bondaya, Sapa Sitara, Bendo Maya, Banyu Maje Ole Sumzatale Diktara.
Ruby Valley has a great tourism potential. It is home to the rare red panda. We have managed to conserve the species very well here. We are culturally diverse too. There are communities like Tamang, Ghale, Gurung and Dalits. They all have their own culture and traditions. The Gurungs have Ghatu Nach. Tamangs have Mendo Maya, Saikhole, Bamsangmo. We are encouraging all the communities to preserve their traditions. We are also helping better manage the homestays and focusing more on trekking trails than roads.
The striking Pangsang Pass at 3,800 meters marks a stunning milestone on the route, offering panoramic views of the green-clad hills and distant Himalayan ranges. Below, forests of tall sal trees stand as silent guardians. As travelers traverse this landscape, they witness local women harvesting crops, hear the heartfelt songs sung by villagers in the fields, and feel the essence of a life deeply connected to the land.
Ruby Valley has made sure to preserve the Tamang culture and the traditions till date. For instance, we all still wear our cultural dress. These are our identity. This song has been in our community since ages. It explains to us of our culture. It also includes our tradition of marrying maternal cousins. Our parents emphasize on continuing the practice. I think I'll get married to my maternal uncle's son too.
The daily sight of Ganesh Himal inspires awe and a sense of peace that visitors carry with them. Ruby Valley lies in the heart of the Himalayas, surrounded by some of Nepal's most famous mountain ranges, Manaslu, Annapurna, Langtang and Ganesh Himal itself.
I find this place amusing. I feel happy. People here are very kind and open-hearted. They are very friendly and welcoming. This place is like home to me, as I lived here for 1.5 years.
One can view Pangsang and Peldur Himal from here along with Langtang and Manaslu range. Ruby Valley is like heaven.
Just like its name, Ruby Valley, this place is Valley of Gems and Jewels. There are precious red, blue, black stones and crystals here. It's a fitting place for geological studies. There's a beautiful mountain range that one can view from here, including the Ganesh Himal, which gives so much light and joy to all Nepalese. The place is rich in animal and bird diversity and is home to different herbs. This is a perfect destination for both international and domestic tourists. Everyone should visit this place at least once in their life.
This place has a great potential. This road here connects Nepal with China and it's also good for trekking. We have helicopter facility, phone and electricity supply. We have all facility that one needs. This is a must-visit destination for both domestic and international visitors.
Ruby Valley is home to different communities. There are as many languages, cultures, and religions as there are communities. Most people are farmers. They do agriculture and also rear livestock. Most take their yaks and sheep upward during monsoon. Up there, it's beautiful. One can find hundreds of different flowers, diverse birds and fauna there. Words are not enough to explain the beauty of Ruby Valley.
This place is a gem. It has precious resources and a great hydropower potential. There are many precious herbs as well. The beautiful mountains and historical sites make this place beautiful.
All my sons and daughters left. They're living their own lives, while we continue to live the way we did. It sounds fun living in the cities, but most don't have their own homes. It must be difficult living in rent. It's easier here. In city, you have to work hard to keep up.
This geographic embrace creates breathtaking scenery at every turn. Yak caravans and mule trains add a touch of timeless charm to the trekking experience, enhancing the rustic beauty of this remote land. The village of Chalis, nestled in the lap of Ganesh Himal, is a cultural crossroads for the Gurung community. Visitors witness their unique traditions, hear their folk songs by evening fires, and enjoy their vibrant dances, which invite travelers to connect on a deeper level. The journey continues beyond the villages to sacred sites like Tatopani Kunda, where natural hot springs offer spiritual purification and healing waters believed to renew body and soul. From there, hikers embark on a challenging yet rewarding trek to the holy Ganesh Kunda, a glacial pond named after Lord Ganesh. This pristine water body mirrors the majestic peaks around it, creating an ethereal panorama that captivates all those who visit.
Most Nepalese know very well that Ganesh Himal range is believed to be a place Hindu Lord Ganesh visits for rest and recreation. That is its speciality.
With peaks ascending over 7,400 meters, Ganesh Himal stands as a guardian of this sacred valley.
Ruby Valley is more than a destination. It is an invitation to experience Nepal's untouched nature, vibrant cultures and spiritual heritage all in one journey. For those seeking a unique adventure off the beaten path, Ruby Valley offers an unparalleled blend of breathtaking landscapes, warm hospitality and rich traditions that make it one of Nepal's top destinations for international and domestic travelers.
In the high mountains, where the air thins and silence deepens, an ancient discipline endures. More than art, this is meditation in motion. A prayer woven into canvas, finding the divine within. This is Thangka.
Thangka भने चाहिँ त्यो समतल भूमि भने हो के हैन त्यो स्पेस भने हो त्यो रेसेमा पनि तपाईले सेतो गडमा स्पेस देख्यो हैन हो त्यसमा चाहिँ का लेख्ने भने चाहिँ बुद्धको वचन लेख्ने भने हो के त्यो बुद्धको वचन बागल चाहिँ त्यो चाहिँ शुद्ध छ हैन राम्रो छ त्यसले चाहिँ मानव जीवनलाई चाहिँ कल्याण मानव जीवनलाई मात्र नभएर प्राणी जगतलाई नै चाहिँ कल्याण गर्ने चीज हो थाङ्गा त्यही भएर चाहिँ जीवन जिउनेसँग चाहिँ रिलेटेड छ भनेर भने हो त्यो चाहिँ पञ्चतत्वको रूपमा चाहिँ त्यो चिनाएर त्यो तत्त्वलाई त्यो ठाउँमा जानुपर्छ भनेरको यो त आशयको रूपमा चाहिँ लगेको हुन्छ
Thangka painting is more than art. It's devotion on canvas, rooted in Buddha philosophy, traditions, and shaped by centuries of Buddhist influence. Each stroke tells a story of enlightenment.
This is not from painter's own mind. This is from the book. So painters, they have to strictly follow the rules. Through meditation, we can understand our true nature. And when we understand our true nature, we understand everybody. And our true nature is compassion. Our true nature is wisdom. And when we practice these things, we find peace, and that peace is permanent.
Thangka painting is not merely creation. It is consecration, rooted in Buddhist philosophy and perfected through centuries. Each brushstroke carries the weight of a mantra, each color a fragment of enlightenment.
खाइबा भन्छ हामीले चाहिँ आर्टिस्टलाई त्यो खाइबाले चाहिँ किन आएर चाहिँ ढोग्यो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ तीनचोटी ढोग्यो नि त्यो शरण गमन गरे हो के म बुद्धको शरणमा छु भन्ने हो त्यो चाहिँ बुद्ध चित्त उत्पाद गर्ने भन्छ के चित्त तपाईको शुद्ध हुनु पर्यो हैन त्यो शुद्ध भएर लेखेको थाङ्गाले चाहिँ अरूलाई पनि राम्रो गर्ने पनि सबै प्राणी हितको लागि चाहिँ यो मैले गरेको लेखेको बुद्ध वचनले चाहिँ उहाँहरूलाई चाहिँ राम्रो होस् भन्ने आशाका साथ चाहिँ छोड्नुपर्छ कि हो यसरी चाहिँ लेखेको हुन्छ थाङ्गा चाहिँ
The Thangka is a visual scripture, a spiritual map to transcendence. Every artist begins not with imagination, but with surrender to discipline, devotion, and compassion for all living beings. To paint is to meditate. To complete is to awaken. In today's studios, the old and the new converge. Tutors like Sushan Subedi introduce curious travelers to ancient grammar of lines and color.
All of the painting you are seeing over here, so these are known as Thangka, which is a Tibetan word which means the painting that is painted on a cotton surface. Okay, so first of all what we do is, we just take a normal cotton like this and we stretch it on a wooden frame very hardly and very tightly. Okay, so while tying it very hard on normal cotton, what happens is there are millions of tiny holes. So if you pour the color can bleed. So we cannot do the painting on a normal cotton. So we have a process, we call it the process of canvas.
While at nearby workshops, artists like Sonam still lose themselves in the ritual of creation.
यो चाहिँ बम्बई ड्याङ कटन जुन यसैबाट चाहिँ हाम्रो ट्रेडिसनल आर्टको चाहिँ थाङ्का फर्स्ट प्रोसेसिङ चाहिँ यहीँबाट हुन्छ सरेस भन्ने गरिन्छ हामीले यो चाहिँ खासमा र याक स्किन भनेर चाहिँ प्रयोग गरिन्छ पहिलेको त्यो हिस्ट्री हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अनि अब यो चाहिँ हाम्रो चाहिँ माध्यम चाहिँ यो ग्लुको काम गर्छ यसले चाहिँ यो र हामीले चाहिँ माटो मिसाएर चाहिँ यसमा पानी लगाएर अब यसको कति मात्रा उ गरेर तताइसकेपछि चाहिँ अनि अब हामीले कत्रो क्यानभस बनाउने कतिवटा बनाउने त्यो हिसाबले हामीले यो सरेस माटो भनिन्छ त्यो मिलाएर मात्र मिलाएर हामीले प्रोसेसिङमा जानु सकिन्छ। हामीले चाहिँ यो क्यानभस बनाउँदाखेरि समयअनुसार मौसमअनुसारले पनि बनाउनु पर्ने हुन्छ। घाम लाग्ने बेलामा बनाउनु सक्यो भने हामीले छिटो आफ्नो कामहरू छिटो छरिदो बनाउन सकिन्छ र झरी पर्ने बेलामा चाहिँ हामीलाई निकै समय लाग्छ। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि यो घाम लाग्ने बेलामा हामीले बनाउनु सक्यौँ भने छिटो अनि यसलाई आफूलाई चाहिने मात्रामा पटक पटक यता दुई साइडमा चाहिँ क्लिन गर्नु सफा गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ अनि कतिको मात्रा हामीलाई चाहिन्छ त्यो पुगिसकेपछि हामीले त्यसपछि स्केचमा जानुपर्ने हुन्छ। यो सुकिसकेपछि चाहिँ एउटा यसरी पनि हामीले चेक गर्न सकिन्छ हामीले कतिको तयारी भयो भएन। यो आवाज आउनुपर्ने हुन्छ। जस्तै अब ओसिएको छ भने बेग्लै आवाज आउँछ, सुकेको छ भने राम्रो आवाज आउँछ। यो
Thangka painting begins with the canvas stretched tight, once upon wood, now upon iron frames. The glue that seals it, once drawn from the yak, now sourced from the maple or synthesized in a lab. Yet in the scent of drying paste, the artist still reads the readiness of the soul of the painting.
So after the sketching is done, second thing we do is the coloring. So while coloring, we have different levels of artists in our school. Like from the beginner level, we have intermediate and the master level of artists. So if you go with the beginner intermediate, they use the acrylic colors. But if you go with the master level of artists, so they use the stone colors like this. Okay, so why they use the stone color is stone being a natural color. So while we apply this sort of color in the art, it remains for the longer period of time because natural thing, it doesn't have expiry date. Yeah? So the meaning and the philosophy of an art, the art itself, it is preserved for the longer period of time. So that's why they use the stone. And for the finishing of an art, so we use 24 karat real gold on the painting. Okay, so why we use the gold is not to make the painting very expensive, but if you see in Hinduism, in Buddhism, gold it is signified as in purity. So to purify the meaning and the philosophy behind the art, so we use 24 karat real gold.
Every line follows a rule, every proportion holds meaning. The face of the deity isn't imagined, it slowly reveals itself, guided by sacred patterns that keep harmony between the world outside and the spirit within. The colors come from the earth, crushed stones and minerals mixed with glue, made to last for generations. Lapis brings purity, malachite speaks of compassion, and cinnabar carries wisdom. These are just colors, they are prayers in pigment.
प्राचीन कालमा चाहिँ यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ पाँचवटा कलर लेख्ने हो। पाँच कलर जस्तो अग्नि तत्त्व, वायु तत्त्व, माटो तत्त्व, हावा तत्त्व, पाँच तत्त्वले बनाएको हो। त्यो पाँच तत्त्वले किन बनाएको भने त्यो पाँच तत्त्वबाट हाम्रो शरीर बनाएको छ नि। यो थाङ्गा भनेको चाहिँ वास्तवमा के हो भने जे जति थाङ्गामा त्यो हामीसँगै छ, जे हामीसँग त्यो थाङ्गामै छ। त्यसकारण त्यो बेला चाहिँ त्यो नेचुरल, हाम्रो पनि नेचुरली बनाएको हो नि त, प्रकृतिले बनाएको नि। थाङ्गा पनि प्रकृति नै हो। त्यसमा अलिकति चाहिँ कलर के छ भने पाँचवटा कलरबाट हामीले मिसाउँदाखेरि अर्को कलर बन्छ। त्यो पाँचवटा कलर मात्रै पुग्दैन। त्यो बेला त्यो रियालिटी थाङ्गाबाट नजिक बसेर साधना गर्दा हामीलाई त्यो भाइब्रेसन आउँछ, पोजिटिभ कुरा आउँछ। यो त खालि बुद्धले टिकाको टिचिङ गर्नुभएको नेचुरल फेनोमेना छ नि, नेचर माइन्ड छ नि, त्योसँग रिलेटेड छ यो।
Home Bahadur Tamang, a gifted Thangka artist from the spiritual heart of Bodha, has turned his craft into a global bridge between tradition and business.
Thangka चाहिँ मैले 1976 मा सुरुवात गरेको। मेरो टिचर चाहिँ म भन्दा अघिल्लो मेरो दाइ हो, साइला दाइ। मेरो चाहिँ बाउपादेखि नै कलाकार हुनुहुन्थ्यो। पाटन, भक्तपुर, छामेल, दरबार स्क्वायरमा यसै पसल बेच्ने काम हुन्थ्यो। अनि त्यो बेच्दा मैले यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ विदेशीले किन्दो रहेछ, आफैले विदेशसँग बेच्नुपर्छ भन्ने अलिकति मनमा मलाई अलिकति सोच आयो। त्यसपछि मैले 2050 सालमा यहाँ सुरु गरेँ, आजभन्दा 32 वर्ष अगाडि।
What began as a young artist's journey through the streets of Kathmandu has blossomed into a thriving enterprise where sacred art meets business and tourism. With every brushstroke, home brings Nepal's rich spiritual heritage to the world, transforming Thangka painting into a symbol of cultural fusion.
त्यो बेला चाहिँ पसल कोही पनि यहाँ थिएन, किनभने त्यो मार्केटले चाहिँ कहाँ मार्केट हुन्छ भन्ने खोज्दो रहेछ। त्यो खोज्ने क्रममा म यहाँ आइपुग्यो। विदेशीहरू पनि यहाँ त्यति अहिले जस्तो बस्दैन, 5 मिनेट 10 मिनेटमा घुमेर जानुहुन्थ्यो। त्यतिखेर खाने रेस्टुरेन्ट पनि एकजना मात्रै थियो, एउटा मात्रै थियो। अहिले चाहिँ होस् त्यो बेला र अहिलेमा धेरै आकाश जमिनको फरक भएको छ।
His story is one of passion, innovation, and a deep commitment to preserving tradition while embracing the future.
विशेष गरी यो बौद्ध स्तूपसँग रिलेटेड छ। यो बुद्धको शिक्षासँग रिलेटेड यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ संसारको मानिसहरू यो स्तूपलाई घुम्ने क्रममा यो प्रार्थना गर्ने मेन आउने ठाउँ चाहिँ यो रहेछ। त्यसो भएको हुनाले यो चाहिँ विशेष गरी ओल्ड हेरिटेज साइटमा चाहिँ त्यो पनि के हो बुद्धिस्टको भएको हुनाले चाहिँ नेपालभरिको नै थाङ्का बिक्ने ठाउँ चाहिँ अति महत्त्वपूर्ण चाहिँ यो नै हो वास्तवमा, किनभने रिलेटेड छ यो बुद्धसँग।
From the hills of Ramechhap to the heart of Bodha, Home Bahadur Damang has a glorious story to tell. A story of will, determination, struggle, and success.
म आफै पनि रामछाप दुर्गम जिल्लामा जन्मेको चाहिँ रोजगार छैन, त्यहाँ स्कुल छैन, कलेज छैन, हस्पिटल छैन, रोजगार छैन। त्यसपछि म पनि रोजगारकै क्रममा यहाँ आएर मैले सुरुवात गर्यो। अहिले चाहिँ म लगभग 49 वर्ष भयो यही पेसा गरेर दाल भात खाएको। अब नयाँ पुस्तालाई पनि मैले हस्तान्तरण गर्नुपर्छ है भन्ने मेरो एउटा उद्देश्यले चाहिँ अहिले मैले नयाँ पुस्तालाई चाहिँ गाउँबाट आउनुहुन्छ, स्कुल सकेर अनि बिहान चाहिँ कलेज जानुहुन्छ, दिउँसो काम छैन। त्यस कारणले मैले 3 महिना फ्री ट्रेनिङ दिने गरेको छ। उहाँको स्किल अन्त टेस्ट गरेर हामीले यहीँ तलब दिएर जस्तो बिहान कलेज पनि भ्यायो उसको कति हो त्यसो त्यहाँबाट एक्स्ट्रा टाइम चाहिँ 5 घण्टा 6 घण्टा 7 घण्टा पनि यहाँ जीवन चलाउने चाहिँ काम भइरहेछ अहिले।
For 49 years, he painted, taught, and empowered young artisans. Today, his school preserves tradition and creates futures.
हामीले यहाँ सुरुमा इन्टरभ्यू लिन्छु, त्यसपछि 1 हप्ता चाहिँ नि सानो क्यानभासमा हात ट्रेनिङ दिन्छु, त्यसको शरीरको बडीहरू अलिकति ट्रेनिङ दिन्छु, अनि 1 हप्तापछि ओके भनेर ओके या यस भने कोही मानिस नसक्ने चाहिँ नि आधा घन्टामा 1 घन्टामा उठेर गइहाल्छ। म सक्दैन, ढाड दुख्यो, किन उसको मन धेरै भएर गयो, त्यो सक्दैन, ऊ आउँदैन, एक दिन पनि आउँदैन। मात्रै आँखा चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो। हामीले अपाङ्गलाई पनि सिकाएको छ, जस्तो बाहिर कान नसुन्ने सिकाएको छ, आँखा चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो, त्यस्तै हो।
As interest in Buddhism grows worldwide, so does the appreciation for our sacred art. Foreigners now come not just to admire but to learn, studying our architecture techniques and meditative Thangka traditions, giving new life to what was once known only within our borders.
बुद्धिज्म नेपाल हो। नेपालमा जति छन् विश्व सम्पदामा सूचीमा भएको मठ मन्दिर गुम्बा छ, यसैबाट उहाँले पनि सिकेको वास्तवमा। यो जुन बौद्ध स्तूपरा भनौँ लुम्बिनी त्यो जस्तो त उहाँहरूले बनाउन सक्दैन, तर यसको चाहिँ एकदम महत्त्वपूर्ण के छ भगवान या चाहिँ दोस्रो तेस्रो बुद्धको रिलेटिभ यहाँ छ। जति चाहिँ अहिले संसारमा यो बुद्धिज्म फैलिँदै जान्छ, यो महायान बुद्धिज्म त्यत्तिकै ठाङ्गको भ्यालु चाहिँ बढ्दैछ अहिले। जस्तो मेरै कुरा मैले 40-45 वर्ष यति ठाङ्गको महत्त्व थिएन, किनभने वर्ल्ड वाइडमा बुद्धिज्ममा थिएन, विदेशीहरूले जानेकै थिएन। उनीहरूले त्यो सुरसुर आउँदाखेरि सानोतिनो एउटा नेपाल आउँदाखेरि सुपर नेट किन नलैजाऊ भन्ने मात्रै लाइन थियो। अहिले चाहिँ उहाँहरू चाहिँ जस्तो अमेरिका, युरोप, तपाईँको यो सिङ्गापुर, ताइवान, मलेसिया, विभिन्न देशमा चाहिँ अहिले बुद्धिस्ट प्र्याक्टिसनर धेरै उहाँहरू चाहिँ गर्नुहुन्छ। त्यसको लागि चाहिँ एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण छ। त्यस कारणले भविष्यमा यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ छ, यसको मार्केट छ।
As an artist, entrepreneur, and a master, he feels fulfilled, creating beauty, guiding others, and living with purpose.
मैले संसार जीवन जगतलाई थाहा पायो। अहिले हामी सांसारिक जीवन छ, सांसारिक जीवनमा कसरी जिउने र अर्कोलाई पनि कसरी जिउन दिने कला थाहा पायो। त्यसपछि अब जुन देशमा जन्मे पनि, जुन कुलमा जन्मे पनि 100% निश्चित के हो भने मृत्यु छ। त्यो त निश्चित हो नि, एउटै निश्चित छैन, कहिले पनि निश्चित छैन। तर त्यो मर्नेमा म कसरी मर्ने भन्ने कला पनि थाहा पाएँ मैले। मलाई त धेरै परिवर्तन भएको छ। मैले परिवर्तन भयो भने के हुन्छ, मैले ठुलो पचेरो चढ्यो, ठुलो गाडी त्यस्तो होइन, तर मलाई खुसी छ। सादा दाल भात खान पाएछ, मैले परिवार पाल्नु पाएछ। यही थाङ्गाले म जापान घुम्यो, युरोप गयो, चाइना घुम्यो, बुद्धिस्ट कन्ट्री सबै घुमेको छ। सबै ठाउँमा मैले घुम्नलाई मलाई पैसाको आपत पनि परेन। थाङ्गा सँगसँगै लाँदै बिर्बिङ गर्दै बेच्दै दर्शन बेचेको हो। त्यस कारण मलाई त एकदम खुसी छु म त पनि।
Then comes the awakening, the eyes. Until that moment, the thanga is silent. When the artist paints the peoples, the deity is invited to reside within. The canvas breathes, the prayer begins. From quiet Himalayan ateliers to the galleries in Tokyo, Berlin, and New York, thangas now travel far beyond the monasteries. They adorn homes, museums, and collectors' walls, a global symbol of Nepal's artistic devotion.
And mostly, thanga word itself is a Tibetan word, so this tradition belongs to Tibetan people. This tradition belongs to Tamang. This tradition belongs to Newar community. Although they have different expression of color, technique, the detail, but this tradition, this culture belongs to this three community, and this is kind of passed on tradition. They learn this skill from their forefather to the new generation. This is how this tradition has been continuing and preserving. So it is beneficial for them to live their life, and it is beneficial for the country because this is the culture, and culture and tradition is the treasure of each country.
The trade sustains thousands. From the hum of Bodha's alleys to export crates bound for distant lands, thanga has become a vital thread in Nepal's creative economy. Yet, as markets grow, so does the tension between faith and fame, between meditation and merchandise.
कला चाहिँ दुवै राम्रै हो हैन, आफ्नो आफ्नै फिलोसफी भन्ने हो। यसले चाहिँ तपाईको मन भित्रको डेप्थमा जाने सिकाउने हो। यसमा चाहिँ यो चाहिँ मिहिन काम हुन्छ, कठिन पनि हुन्छ के, किनभने यसमा चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ अघिको जस्तो धेरै चीजहरु चाहिँ लिनुपर्छ, अनुशासन लिनु पर्यो हैन, यसको विधि विधानमा बसेर गर्नुपर्छ। यसमा चाहिँ अब त्यो चाहिँ तपाईको मनमा जुन फिलिङ्स आउँछ त्यो लेखिहाल्ने हो के। त्यो गर्दाखेरि त्यसले पनि वर्ल्डमा चलिरहेछ यसले चाहिँ नेपालले किन त्यो अब त्यसलाई चाहिँ कम्पिटिसन गर्न सक्छ भने चाहिँ यो चिज चाहिँ अरूले गर्न सक्दैन किनभने त्यसमा मेडिटेसन ध्यान जस्तै गर्नुपर्छ कि सरकारी स्कुलबाट चाहिँ स्कुलिङदेखि नै गर्नुपर्छ यसको पाठ्यक्रमहरू बनाउनु पर्छ हैन एउटा त्यो गरिसकेपछि यसको प्रमोट हुन्छ हैन हामीलाई चाहिने त त्यो प्रवर्धन हो नि तर ब्याङ्किङहरूले पनि के गर्नु पर्यो भने यसलाई चाहिँ बिना दिदोमा पनि के अरे ऋण दिने वातावरण हैन कलाकारको के छुट्याएर के अनि तपाईँको हामीले ट्याक्स तिर्नुपर्छ ट्याक्स तिर्दाखेरि पनि कुनै एउटा चिज चाहिँ कलाकारलाई कुन ओदामा राखेर त्यसको एउटा ब्यालेन्स एउटा गरेर सरकारले गरिदियो भने यसको झन् अझ फ्रस्टिन्छ कि फ्रस्टिएपछि त यो नेपालकै लागि चाहिँ यसले चाहिँ पर्यटनलाई पनि विकास हुने अनि त्यो स्कुल कलेजमा भयो भने पुस्ता हस्तान्तरण चाहिँ एकदम दिगो हुन्छ कि
All the Thanka has same meaning of peace. So foreigner, they admire philosophy. Practitioner also, they choose deities mostly to practice, to visualize, and they imagine the quality of deities with themselves. And some least person, they want it as a souvenir to decorate for the positive vibe. Some they buy it for the gift for their loved one. Philosophy reminds us about the beautiful quality, and that quality gives us peace, and that peace is everyone searching for. So Thanka painting is very, very important for everyone because it is relevant with our life. If it is relevant with our life, that is truth.
But beyond commerce and canvas, a Thanka is still a mirror, reflecting a way of life where art and spirit breathe as one. Every brush that moves today carries the echo of generations, an unbroken whisper from monastery walls to the modern world. As the sun sets over the Himalayas, somewhere an artist bows before a finished Thanka. His work is now complete, his prayer released. For in every stroke lies a journey, from pigment to prayer, from devotion to eternity. This is not just Nepal's art, it is Nepal's soul, painted into time.
March 5 general elections almost complete except for 2 constituencies. RSP's win paves the way for new majority government. Nepal set to start new parliamentary term. Process begins once final election report is submitted to the president. Newly elected members sworn in to Nepal's National Assembly, oath administered by Upper House Chair in Singhadarbar. Nepal's stock market surges today after election results. Nipsey hits 3 consecutive positive circuits, suspending trading. Global oil prices hit highest as Iran-US-Israel conflict escalates. Energy and commodity markets react to tensions in key Gulf regions. And ANFA operations halted as players lock office. Football governing body pledges gradual payments. Good evening, I'm Sarah Sapsanamarai, and this is NTV World News Hour, coming to you live from Kathmandu at 2200 hours Nepal time. Now the news in detail. Nepal's Supreme Court has directed the Election Commission to appear on March 10 with a file regarding the cancellation of the candidacy of Rashtriya Swatantra Party candidate Kishori Shah Kamal in Dhanusha constituency number 1. A single bench of Justice Nripadhos Nirola today ordered not to make public the voting results in Dhanusha 1, where the candidacy of RSP candidate Shah was cancelled. The counting of votes has been completed. The defendants in the case have been asked to submit a written response through the Attorney General's office within 7 days of the date of receipt of the order, along with the reasons for the same. So far, results have been announced in 163 out of 165 constituencies for the House of Representatives election. Vote counting is still underway in Sankhwa Sabha, while for Dhanusha 1, the process is under dispute and is being considered by the Supreme Court. In the latest count from Gorkha 1, Sudhan Gurung secured 29,896 votes to win, while his closest competitor, Prem Kumar Khatri of Nepali Congress, received 15,398 votes. In Ilam Constituency 1, Nishkal Rai of Nepali Congress won with 14,543 votes, narrowly defeating Binod Nemwang Limbu of Shram Sanskriti Party. He received 13,632 votes. Of the results announced so far, Rashtriya Swatantra Party has won in 125 constituencies, Nepali Congress in 18, CPN-UML in 8, Nepali Communist Party in 7 and Shram Sanskriti Party in 3 constituencies. Likewise, Rashtriya Prajatantra Party secured win in 1 constituency and an independent candidate won in 1 constituency. Proportional representation vote counting is also underway. So far, results from 9.742 million ballot votes have been announced. The PR vote shows RSP in the lead with 4.694 million votes. Nepali Congress has received 1.578 million votes, CPN-UML 1.315 million, Nepali Communist Party 709,000 votes, Shram Sanskriti Party 332,000 votes and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party 309,000 votes. Nepal's newly elected parliament is set to convene soon, no later than 30 days after the Election Commission of Nepal submits the final results of the election to the president. Once summoned, lawmakers will take the oath of office and elect a speaker and deputy speaker within 15 days to oversee parliamentary proceedings. With Rashtriya Swatantra Party likely to have a single-party majority, the president will appoint its parliamentary leader as prime minister, who must then secure a vote of confidence in the House within 30 days to formally establish the new government. The first session of the lower house will mark both the start of a new legislative term and the beginning of government formation, likely before the Nepali New Year 2083. More on this in our issue of the day later in the bulletin. Now, 17 of the 18 newly elected members of Nepal's upper house, the National Assembly, were sworn in today at a ceremony held in Singadarwar. National Assembly Chair Narayan Prasad Dahal administered the oath to the new members of the Assembly. The upper house has a total of 59 members, each serving a 6-year term, with 1/3 of the members' terms ending every 2 years as per constitutional provision. The newly sworn-in members include Khamma Bahadur Khati, Geeta Devkota, Chandra Bahadur Kesi, Jagat Timilsina, Dharmendra Paswan, Prem Prasad Dangal, Mahanta Thakur, Ranjit Karna, Ramkumari Chakri, Rekha Kumari Jha, Rosni Meche, Lalit Jang Shahi, Leela Kumari Bhandari, Basudev Khimire, Samjana Devkota, Sunil Bahadur Thapa and Somnath Portel. Member Meena Singh Rakhal was absent from the ceremony. Nepal's stock market surged following Rashtriya Swatantra Party's decisive win in the lower house election. This prompted Nepal Stock Exchange NEPSE to halt trading multiple times due to positive circuit limits. NEPSE index climbed 162.93 points, reaching 2,875.43, marking a 6% gain. Early enthusiasm among investors triggered 3 consecutive positive circuits, a 4% rise in the first 20 minutes, a 5% after 40 minutes, and a 6% increase later in the session, leading to the suspension of trading for the day. Under the current circuit break rules, NEPSE halts trading for 20 minutes if the index rises or falls by 4% in the first hour, 40 minutes for a 5% change in the second hour, and suspends trading for the remainder of the day if the index moves 6% or more. Today, 261 companies traded 1.14 million shares in 4,051 transactions, totaling to 555.9 million rupees, which is $4.2 million approximately. Meanwhile, oil prices have jumped more than 25% to their highest levels since mid-2022, as the ongoing Middle East war enters its 10th day. Benchmark crude oil prices exceeded $100 a barrel. Energy markets also reacted sharply, with future contracts jumping more than 20% in early trading, while gold and other commodities saw increased volatility as investors sought safe haven assets. The surge reflects supply concerns arising from escalating clashes in key oil-producing regions, with traders anticipating potential disruptions to exports from the Gulf. French Finance Minister Roland Lescure confirmed that while the economic impact has been discussed with leaders like UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves, a final decision at the G7 meeting has not yet been reached. Earlier, US President Donald Trump dismissed the spike as a small price to pay to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat, reiterating his insistence that the rise is temporary. The All Nepal Football Association has expressed serious concern after its member organization, Nepal Football Players Union, padlocked its central office in Sadobatu yesterday. In a press release, ANFA said the action, taken without prior notice, could harm cooperation between sports bodies. The association emphasized ongoing dialogue with clubs and players over the organization of a division league scheduled a month after the National League concludes. ANFA also highlighted pending payments, prize money and welfare funds for players, pledging to release them gradually according to rules. Warning that the padlock could disrupt football activities, ANFA urged the Players' Union to lift it immediately and resolve issues through dialogue. Coming up, Nepal's election is over, but the countdown to a new government has just begun. With RSP poised to take a historic majority, how soon will the keys to Singha Darbar be handed over? We look at the timeline from the Election Commission's final report to a potential New Year 2083 swearing-in. Our issue of the day after this break. You're watching NTV World and this is News Hour. Welcome back. Time now for issue of the day. Nepal is heading to form a new parliament and set up a new government as the March 5 elections concluded successfully. In the latest deadline, it will be by Nepali New Year 2083, but could be as early as the president receives the final report from the Election Commission on the election. The Commission's preparations are to submit the result by the end of this week, meaning Rashtriya Swatantra Party is all set to form the new majority by mid-March. Everyone at this moment is waiting to know how and when will the process to form new government begin. Smithuki Singh Tamang looks into how and when the new government will be formed, along with the maiden session of the freshly mandated House of Representatives.
Nepal's newly elected parliament is expected to convene latest by the 30th day of the final results of the March 5 House of Representatives election. The final result announcement day will be counted from the time the Election Commission submits its report to the President. According to the Federal Parliament Secretariat of Nepal, as per constitutional provision, the President must summon the first meeting of the new House of Representatives within 30 days after he receives the report.
पहिला त निर्वाचनको अन्तिम मत परिणाम सार्वजनिक भएको मितिले 30 दिनभित्र सभाको बैठक बस्नुपर्छ भन्ने संवैधानिक व्यवस्था छ। अन्तिम मत सार्वजनिक भए पछाडिको 30 दिनभित्र बस्ने गरेर नै सबै कुराको व्यवस्थापन हुन्छ।
Nepal follows a parliamentary system where the government is formed based on majority support in the lower house of bicameral parliament. The process begins once the President of Nepal formally summons the first session of the House of Representatives of Nepal. During that first meeting, newly elected lawmakers are sworn into office. The House then begins its internal processes, including the election of a Speaker and Deputy Speaker within 15 days, who will preside over parliamentary proceedings. At the same time, as per Article 76(1) of the Constitution, President appoints the parliamentary party leader of the party with majority to the post of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers under his or her chairpersonship. With the likely equation of the House of Representatives tilting towards single-party majority, there would be no need for any coalition this time around. As per constitutional provision, the newly appointed Prime Minister must then seek a vote of confidence in the lower house within 30 days, formally establishing the new government. The upcoming parliamentary session will therefore mark the beginning of both the new legislative term and the process of forming Nepal's next government. As the process demands around 30 days for the appointment of new Prime Minister in Nepal, all eyes are when will the President receive the report and summon the first meeting. The 30-day deadline is the maximum. Nepali people most likely are set to see the new Prime Minister before the Nepali New Year 2083. Smithuki Singh Tamang reporting for NTV World.
With most of the first-past-the-post results in, attention is now turning to Nepal's proportional representation system, which will fill the remaining 110 seats in the 275-member House of Representatives. But how exactly does the proportional representation system work? How are seats allocated to parties from the nationwide votes, and what qualifies a party as a national party? Our colleague Diksha Awasthi brings us a detailed explainer.
Nepal follows a mixed electoral system of first-past-the-post and proportional representation. As vote counting almost comes to a conclusion for Nepal's House of Representatives election, attention is now shifting to the proportional representation or PR system. Unlike the first-past-the-post system, where the candidate who gets the highest votes in their respective constituency comes first and wins the election, the PR system considers the whole nation as one constituency and allocates seats to political parties based on their total share of valid votes nationwide. So how exactly are these votes counted and how are seats distributed among parties? Nepal's Federal House of Representatives has total 275 members, 165 from first-past-the-post system and 110 from proportional representation system. Under the proportional representation system, voters cast their ballot for a political party. Every party submits a closed list of candidates to the Election Commission months before the election. Once all votes are counted nationwide, seats are allocated to parties using the modified Saint log method in proportion to votes they receive. For example, if 100 total PR votes are cast nationwide for 110 seats, a party receiving 20 votes will have 20% of the total votes and get 22 seats of the 110. The candidates of the party receiving 22 proportional representation seats will be declared from the party's submitted candidate list following the inclusion cluster criteria. After determining the number of seats, the Election Commission asks the party to select representatives from its submitted candidate list. But the selection must follow strict constitutional inclusion rules. Cluster-wise allocation, that is, inclusion system, including sub-clusters, have been implemented in the PR closed list. Therefore, candidates are selected from 6 social clusters. These clusters and their minimum representation percentage are: women consist of 50%, indigenous nationalities, that is Adivasi Janajati, has to be 28.7%, Khas Arya consists of 31.2%, Madhesis representation has to be 15.3%, Dalits representation 13.8%, Tharu's representation 6.6%, Muslim has to be 4.4%. Now comes party threshold rule. Not every party that receives votes automatically gets PR seats. Nepal's election law sets a minimum 3% threshold to become a national party. This means a political party must secure at least 3% of the total valid PR votes nationwide to qualify for proportional representation seats. Parties failing to meet this threshold do not receive PR seats, even if they receive some votes. One seat under the first-past-the-post election system and become a national party. The PR system, designed to ensure both proportionality and inclusion, remains a key pillar of Nepal's electoral framework. Diksha Awasthi with camera person Samir Thapa reporting for NTV World.
New lawmakers are ready, and the timeline for the maiden session of the House of Representatives could be as early as next week. But the new under-construction Federal Parliament building inside Singadarwar premises is still far from being complete. Department of Building has now started working on a makeshift plan to hold the maiden session and the oath-taking ceremony in separate halls. We'll look at the progress and preparations of the new Parliament building. The new House of Representatives, elected from the March 5 election, is very likely to hold its maiden session from the Federal Parliament building under construction within Singadarwar premises, since the Baneshwar-based building is in ruins following the Gen Z movement. The Federal Parliament Secretariat says the remaining construction works are being carried out at war footing to complete in time. The Department of Building Construction has said in the first phase, the meeting hall and related technical work for conducting sessions will be completed and handed over to the government.
What we have thought earlier is like the lower house will be completed by the end of this Fagun. The consequences now is like we need the lower house building as soon as possible because our MPs are already there. So we are now preparing an alternative for this. We have one multipurpose hall inside the newly constructed Parliament building. We have prepared that hall as lower house for the time being. It's kind of a makeshift program. So we will be preparing multipurpose hall as a lower house for a couple of meetings or sessions, let's say. The oath-taking session and the other couple of sessions will be taken in that makeshift parliament, and later on, once the lower house is completed, then we'll start our new lower house.
However, the department has indicated that full completion of the building will take more time. The foundation stone for the building was laid on September 17, 2019. Contract with the Chinese construction company was made to complete the building within 3 years' time. According to the initial agreement, construction was to be completed by October 2nd, 2022, but delays due to COVID-19 pandemic and other reasons have caused repeated extensions, now up to 6 times. The building will include the House of Representatives building, National Assembly building, along with other amenities to make it a complete Federal Parliament complex. Nepal's March 5 House of Representatives election has ushered a new wave of youth into Parliament, with with 20 candidates under 35 winning, mostly from Rashtriya Swatantra Party. This election also marks a major setback for traditional and regional parties, including long-dominant Madhesi and Tharu groups. April Agising Lama with Saloja Dahal takes a look.
Nepal's recent House of Representatives election on March 5 delivered a historic blow to the country's Madhesi parties, which represent the Tarai Plains and other long-established political forces. In a surprising outcome, no party from Madhesi or Tharu majority regions managed to win a seat, leaving some of Nepal's most influential regional leaders without parliamentary representation. Madhesi parties, once a decisive political force, had played a key role in shaping Nepal's federal system after the 2007-2008 Madhesi movement. In the 2008 Constituent Assembly election, the Madhesi Jana Adhikar Forum and allied parties won a combined 135 seats, giving them the power to influence government formation. Over the years, internal splits and the emergence of new parties fragmented their support base. Prominent figures such as Upendra Yadav, C.K. Raut, Rajendra Mahato, and others, many of whom served as ministers, have been defeated this time. Notably, even in their home provinces, no Madhesi party retained a single constituency. Established leftist parties like the Nepal Workers and Peasants Party and Rashtriya Jana Morcha also failed to win seats. Analysts suggest that voters prioritize development, employment, and daily governance issues for identity politics, leaving traditional Madhesi parties unable to meet public expectations.
अब मधेसको पहिचान र राजनीतिक सहभागिता जुन हकमा हुनुपर्छ भन्ने उहाँहरुको माग थियो त्यो माग त संवैधानिक रूपमा र राजनीतिक दलहरुले चाहिँ व्यावहारिक रूपमा पनि पूरा गरिसके अब उहाँहरुको राजनीतिक मुद्दा पूरा भइसक्यो नयाँ राजनीतिक मुद्दाको रूपमा उहाँहरु स्थापितै हुन सक्नु भएन परिणाम त यस्तो आउनु नै थियो.
This election underscores a major realignment in Nepali politics, as once powerful regional and identity-based parties face marginalization in favor of issue-focused governance.
As Nepal prepares for a new parliamentary term, questions remain over how the government will coordinate with the newly formed parliament and political leaders. We asked this to political party leaders in our Public Pulse segment. Let's have a look.
विगतमा भएका घटनालाई हेरेर त्यसबाट पाठ सिकेर त्यो धेरै बिलहरु त्यहाँ अड्केर बसेको छ. त्यसैले गर्दाखेरि त्यो बिलहरुलाई कसरी पास गर्ने र राष्ट्रलाई निकासा दिने गर्नको लागि तपाईको अहिले भएको हाम्रो यो फेडरलिजम र समावेशीलाई मजबुत बनाउनको लागि त्यो अनुसारको काम गर्ने हो भने दोस्रो हामीहरूले हेर्नुपर्ने एन्टी करप्सन र गुड गभर्नेन्सको कुराहरु छ. अहिले यो यत्रो जेनजी आन्दोलनले यसैको तुसार हो.
राष्ट्रसभामा अहिले नयाँ पार्टीको उपस्थिति देखिदैन यो कुरा चाहिँ अनि यत्रो ठुलो म्यान्डेट लिएर उहाँहरु आउनुभएको छ झन्डै 2/3 बहुमत पुगिसक्नु भएको छ अनि त्यो कानुन यिनीहरुको व्यापक संशोधन गर्नुपर्ने छ हैन. त्यो कसरी हुन्छ त गाह्रो होला यो पुरानो पार्टी अनि एउटा त्यो नदेला भन्ने कुराहरु म यो चिन्न चाहन्छु. नेपाली कांग्रेसले हो ले राष्ट्रसभाबाट चाहिँ प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट आएका कुनै कानुन यिनीहरु र संविधान संशोधनका कुराहरु देश र जनताको हकमा हितमा छ भने कुनै कुराहरु 1 मिनेट रोकिदैन.
प्रतिनिधि सभा र राष्ट्रिय सभाको बीचमा समन्वय सहकार्य गर्न आवश्यक छ र यसको बीचमा जनतालाई मूल केन्द्रबिन्दुमा राखेर राष्ट्रिय स्तरका नीति नियम कानुनहरु बनाउनु पर्छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ.
मूलत देश र जनता प्रति चाहिँ त्यो जिम्मेवारीका साथ हामीले दुईटा सदनलाई समन्वयात्मक ढंगले सन्तुलित हिसाबले अगाडि बढाउनु पर्छ. प्रतिनिधि सभा र राष्ट्रिय सभाको बीचमा आवश्यक समन्वय सहकार्य बिना मुलुकका लागि उपयुक्त जनताका लागि उपयुक्त नीति निर्माण गर्न सकिन्छ.
अहिले संसदीय अभ्यासमा नयाँ चाहिने अध्याय सुरु भएको छ. त्यसलाई नौलो ढंगबाट हामीले चाहिने र सार्थक हिसाबमा सफल हुने हिसाब किताबमा र तल्लो सदन र उपल्लो सदनको दुवैको सम्बन्ध र दूरीलाई धेरै न्यानो र अनि गरिबिलो हिसाब किताबमा अगाडि बढाउने चाहिने हाम्रो प्रयास रहनेछ.
सरकारले ल्याएका हर प्रकारका राष्ट्र र जनताको हितलाई सर्वोपरि राखेर ल्याउने हरेक नीति कार्यक्रम र विधि जसलाई राष्ट्रिय सभाद्वारा पारित गर्नुपर्छ त्यस्तो काममा राष्ट्रिय सभा सहयोगी रूपमा भूमिका खेल्छ.
That wraps up our issue of the day. Meanwhile, the Election Commission of Nepal has officially announced the termination of the Election Code of Conduct 2082. Implemented on January 19, 2026, the code was designed to ensure integrity, fairness and transparency during National Assembly elections on January 24 and the lower house elections on March 5. The code also aimed to create a fearless environment for candidates and voters in line with the Section 22 of the Election Commission Act 2073. As per the Commission's latest decision, all provisions of the Election Code of Conduct will cease to be effective from today midnight. Narayan Prasad Bhattarai, Joint Secretary and spokesperson of the Election Commission, confirmed the termination and thanked all stakeholders for their cooperation during the election period. Kathmandu today topped the global list for worst air pollution, with AQI hitting 196 and conflict-driven toxic smoke on the horizon. The Ministry of Health is urging immediate action. We have a full report on this growing crisis next in our cover story. Stay with us. You're watching News Hour here on NTV World. I'm Sarah Sapsanamarai. Welcome back. Time now for our cover story of the day. Kathmandu has become the most polluted city in the world, recording the highest air pollution level on Monday, with the air quality index reaching 196 according to global air quality monitoring platform IQ Air. The reading places the capital in the unhealthy category, meaning air pollution can begin to affect the entire population, particularly children, the elderly and those with respiratory or heart diseases. According to AQI scale, levels between 151 and 200 are considered unhealthy, while readings above 200 are classified as very unhealthy. Amid the worsening air quality, the Ministry of Health and Population has urged the public to take precautions. Ministry spokesperson Dr. Prakash Morathoki warned rising air pollution could lead to serious health problems affecting the heart, lungs, blood vessels, eyes and kidneys, and could also increase the risk of cancer. Authorities have advised the public to limit outdoor activities during the morning and evening hours and wear masks even if going outside is necessary. The Gulf conflict is now triggering a growing environmental crisis. Strikes on fuel depots and oil infrastructure across Iran and the wider region are sending toxic smoke into the air and raising fears of long-term ecological damage. Shivani Thapa Basnath brings you more.
The Gulf conflict is no longer only a military crisis. It is rapidly becoming an environmental catastrophe. Across Iran, the sound of missiles and air defenses now competes with another threat: burning fuel infrastructure. Overnight strikes by the United States and Israel hit fuel depots in and around Tehran and the nearby city of Karaz, setting massive oil storage facilities ablaze. Iranian authorities warn the fires are releasing hazardous materials and toxic substances into the air, worsening pollution in a country already struggling with severe environmental stress. But the damage is not confined to Iran. Across the Gulf region, oil facilities, refineries and storage depots have been hit or damaged as fighting intensifies. Fires at energy installations in Saudi Arabia and Qatar have sent thick plumes of smoke into the atmosphere. Tankers have been struck in the Gulf and some pipelines remain ablaze. Environmental monitors say more than 100 incidents of ecological damage have already been recorded across the region, from Iran to Bahrain, the UAE and Kuwait. And this crisis is unfolding in the heart of the world's oil belt. Saudi Arabia alone pumps close to 10 million barrels of oil a day. The United Arab Emirates produces more than 3 million barrels daily, while Iran's output has hovered around 3 million barrels despite the war. But the conflict is already disrupting production and infrastructure. In Iraq, one of the region's key exporters, output from southern oil fields has collapsed by nearly 70% this month, falling to around 1.3 million barrels a day. Kuwait has announced precautionary cuts, while Qatar has scaled back parts of its energy production following attacks on facilities. Burning oil infrastructure releases toxic particles into the air, contaminates water supplies, and threatens fragile marine ecosystems in the Gulf. Waters already under immense pressure from decades of oil extraction and rising temperatures. History offers a stark warning. During the 1991 Gulf War, hundreds of oil wells burned for months, leaving environmental damage that lasted for decades, and the consequences will not stop at the Gulf. For South Asia, where countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka rely heavily on Gulf energy imports, disruptions to oil production and shipping routes could push up fuel prices while increasing global carbon emissions as ships take longer routes around conflict zones. In a world already grappling with climate change, the environmental cost of this war is only beginning to unfold, and it may outlast the conflict itself.
That wraps up our cover story of the day. In other news, the Rasuagari border point, a key trade route between Nepal and China, has recorded imports worth approximately $142.6 million and exports around $2.25 million. Chief Customs Officer Tulsi Prasad Bhattarai reported that by mid-February in the current fiscal year, imports through the border point reached 18.76 billion rupees, which is approximately $142.6 million, an export total around $2.25 million. Trade has been disrupted after a flood from the Chinese side in July damaged Rasuagari customs infrastructure and access road, preventing normal operations for several months. In Nepal's far west, the Festival of Colors is not just a day, it's a season. In Rana Tharu settlements, holy festivities last for an incredible 38 days, making it one of the longest and most vibrant celebrations in the country. This year, however, celebrations were briefly paused due to March 5 lower house election, but have now resumed, with singing and dancing taking place across villages. Bijeta Bhandari, along with our local correspondent Dinesh Bista, brings the report.
The Rana Tharu community in Nepal's far western plains celebrates Hori, similar to the Festival of Colors Holi, with distinctive traditions that unfold over several weeks. The early phase of the festival is known as Jinda Hori. From the full moon day of Nepali month of Magh to the full moon of Fagun, community members gather at night to dance in groups to the rhythm of drums and madal. Young people and elders alike take part, turning the celebrations into a lively communal gathering. After the ritual of Holika Dahan, when a bonfire is lit to mark the burning of the demoness Holika, the second phase called Mari Hori begins. Mari Hori, meaning dead Hori, continues for another 8 days. During this time, people wear traditional attire and travel around villages during the day performing Hori dances. The final day of Mari Hori is known as Khaktehara, which holds special significance. On Khaktehara Day, villagers gather early in the morning to break a ceremonial mud pot filled with symbolic items such as eye coal, vermilion, and mud marbles woven into wooden picks. The pot is then taken to the outskirts of the village and shattered according to ritual, symbolizing the end of evils and diseases within the community.
दाह संस्कार गर्ने ल हाम्रो नगर चाहिँ राम्रो होस् र यो जुन पीडा जुन अब यताउता जुन बिमारी छ नि त्यसलाई सबै लिएर देवी माता लिएर जानु होला भनेर हामी चाहिँ
Afterward, families invite relatives, friends, and companions to share traditional sweets and dishes. However, according to tradition, Hori is considered fully concluded only after the Charai festival is observed later around mid-March. For the Rana Tharu community, Hori is celebrated as a symbol of the victory of truth over falsehood. The festival is also believed to strengthen unity, brotherhood, and cultural identity within the community. Recognizing its cultural importance, local governments have also been supporting traditional costumes and cultural programs during the celebrations. For the Rana Tharu community, Hori is not only a joyful festival, but also a symbol of tradition, culture, and social harmony, as this centuries-old practice continues to enrich the cultural identity of Nepal's far western region.
Time now for international updates, but before that, let's have a quick recap of our top stories this hour. March 5 general elections almost complete except for 2 constituencies. RSP's win paves way for new majority government. Nepal set to start new parliamentary term. Process begins once final election report is submitted to the president. Newly elected members sworn in to Nepal's National Assembly, oath administered by the upper house chair in Singadarar. Nepal's stock market surges today after election results. Nepse hits 3 consecutive positive circuits, suspending trading. Global oil prices hit highest as Iran-US-Israel conflict escalates. Energy and commodity markets react to tensions in key Gulf regions. And ANFA operations halted as players lock office. Football governing body pledges gradual payments. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated key leaders of Rashtriya Swatantra Party following their success in Nepal's elections. According to a message shared by Prime Minister Modi on social media, he held warm telephone conversations with Rabi Lamichhane, the chairperson of Rashtriya Swatantra Party, and senior party leader Balendra Shah. During the conversations, Prime Minister Modi congratulated the leaders on their electoral victories and the party's strong performance in the recent elections. He also conveyed his best wishes for the formation of the new government, reaffirming India's commitment to working closely with Nepal for mutual prosperity, development, and the well-being of both countries. Modi further expressed confidence that India-Nepal relations will reach new heights through continued cooperation and shared efforts in the coming years. Iran's military and political leaders have pledged allegiance to Mojtaba Khamenei, who has been named to replace his killed father Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader. It was 9 days after US-Israeli strikes killed the elder Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and plunged the Middle East into war. The clerical government's assembly of experts convened to choose their next leader, defying threats from the US and Israel to oppose him. Pawana Casey takes a closer look.
Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been appointed to succeed his father as the new head of the Islamic Republic. The younger Khamenei was named Supreme Leader by the top clerical body, the Assembly of Experts, in a statement published shortly after midnight on Monday in Iran. Other contenders for the top position had included Ali Reza Arafi, one of 3 members of the interim council running the country, hardliner Mohsen Araki, and even Hassan Khomeini, the grandson of the founder of the Islamic Republic in 1979. But ultimately, the assembly settled on 56-year-old Mojtaba Khamenei. Born on 8 September 1969 in the holy city of Mashhad in eastern Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei is one of 6 children of the late supreme leader. His father was killed aged 86 just over a week ago in Tehran, became supreme leader in 1989. He is the only child of the former supreme leader to hold a public position despite having no official post. He is regarded as close to conservatives, notably primarily because of his ties with the Revolutionary Guard, the ideological arm of the Islamic Republic's military. The U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on Mustafa Khamenei in 2019 during President Donald Trump's first term, saying he represented the supreme leader despite never being elected or appointed to a government position aside from work in the office of his father. U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted cautiously to Iran appointing Mustafa Khamenei as the new supreme leader, saying he is not happy and will decide the war's course with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel has warned the new leader could be a target as the U.S.-Iran conflict escalates.
Business news coming up next after this short break.
Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 fell sharply today, closing more than 5% lower as escalating tensions in the Middle East rattled global financial markets. The index dropped 5.2% to 52,728.72 points by the end of trading, marking one of its steepest single-day declines in recent months. The sell-off was driven by investor concerns over geopolitical instability and its potential impact on global energy supplies and economic growth. Regional markets also came under pressure. South Korea's KOSPI recorded similar losses as investors moved away from riskier assets amid uncertainty surrounding the conflict in the Middle East. It is said fears of rising oil prices and supply disruptions have heightened volatility across Asian equities, prompting widespread selling in major markets. Investors are closely monitoring developments in the region as geopolitical tensions continue to influence global financial sentiment and economic outlook. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has said that authorities would cap domestic fuel prices for the first time in nearly 30 years to contain a spike in prices after the conflict in the Middle East sent global crude prices sharply higher. Speaking at an emergency meeting on the impact of the Middle East crises, Lee said the government would swiftly introduce and boldly implement a maximum price system on petroleum products that have recently seen excessive price increases. He added that South Korea will also look for sources of energy beyond supplies shipped via the Strait of Hormuz. The amount of crude oil shipped to South Korea affected by the Strait of Hormuz blockade is around 1.7 million barrels per day. Lee also said maximum price could be changed every 2 weeks, noting South Korea had sufficient oil reserves to meet 208 days of consumption. China has highlighted the importance of its upcoming 15th five-year plan, describing it as a key stage for strengthening the country's economic and social foundations ahead of its long-term modernization goals. A draft outline of the plan was submitted to the National People's Congress during its fourth session for review. Officials said the plan will guide China's development from 2026 to 2030 with a strong focus on economic growth, innovation, social welfare, and green development. The draft also proposes maintaining GDP growth within an appropriate range during the five-year period. Annual growth targets will be set based on economic conditions to support China's broader objective of doubling its 2020 per capita GDP by 2035 and reaching the level of a moderately developed economy. In addition, the plan outlines major strategic tasks in 16 key sectors, including innovation, regional development, infrastructure, and human capital investment. Cocoa farmers in West Africa are facing growing financial hardship despite the sharp rise in global chocolate prices over the past year as falling cocoa prices and payment delays leave many producers without income. In Ghana and Ivory Coast, which together produce the majority of the world's cocoa, farmers say they have not been paid for months after local buying companies struggle to sell their crops on the international market. The crisis follows a sharp surge in global cocoa prices in 2024, driven by poor harvests and supply shortages. However, prices have since fallen significantly as global production improved and demand weakened. Chocolate manufacturers have also reduced cocoa use and shrunk product sizes after high ingredient costs.
Time now for sports update. The head coach of Iraq's men's football team, Graham Arnold, has issued an urgent plea to FIFA to delay his team's intercontinental qualifier for the World Cup because of disruptions caused by escalating Israeli-United States war on Iran. Iraq faces major logistical issues before a winner-takes-all playoff against either Suriname or Bolivia, scheduled for March 31st in Monterrey, Mexico. With Iraqi airspace closed until April 1 due to the war, Arnold's squad, which is made up predominantly of players from the domestic league, will be unable to fully gather. On the other side, Iran was the first team to seal qualification for the World Cup, but the war has thrown their participation in doubt, both due to logistical difficulties and due to attacks on Iran by the host nation, US. Time now for the weather update, first from Nepal and then around the world. Before we wrap up, here's a look at the top stories once again. March 5 general elections almost complete except for 2 constituencies. RSP's win paves way for new majority government. Nepal set to start new parliamentary term. Process begins once final election report is submitted to the president. Newly elected members sworn in to Nepal's National Assembly, oath administered by the upper house chair in Singhdadwar. Nepal's stock market surges today after election results. NEPSE hits 3 consecutive positive circuits, suspending trading. Global oil prices hit highest as Iran-US-Israel conflict escalates. Energy and commodity markets react to tensions in key Gulf regions. And ANFA operations halted as players lock office. Football governing body pledges gradual payments. Well, as the final votes are tallied, the March 5 election has proven one thing: the ultimate power rests with the people. This sweeping shift in our politics is a reminder that the public who grants a mandate can also choose otherwise. This historic transition was made possible by the Sushila Karki-led government, which delivered on its promises of free and fair elections. Their work alongside the Election Commission and the thousands of security forces on the ground has given us a result unseen in years, a clear parliamentary majority. For the winners, this is a massive opportunity to end the era of gridlock. With the numbers finally on one side, the era of pointing fingers at the opposition is over. The next government simply has no option but to deliver. And that brings us to the end of this edition of News Hour here on NTV World. Do join us through our social media pages and get the latest update from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. I'm Sarah Sapsanamarai. Thanks for staying with us. Good night.